Chapter 11:24. Heavenly Venerate Vast Expanse's words were still a little provocative. Heavenly Venerate was also divided into 3 major realms? Wasn't Heavenly Venerate just like the other realms, divided into 10 levels? Lee Yun didn't go and ask too much, but this standard to become a disciple was really terrifying enough. He was only an Earth Lord now, and it would take a long time before he could break through to Heavenly Venerate. After all, the experience required was so much, especially now that there was a condition restriction, it was even harder to break through. Unless he broke through to the Lord of Heaven now, but if he really did that, then there wouldn't be any value. Young man, don't be discouraged. You're still young now, and your cultivation has already broken through to the 9 refinements Earth Lord level. It can be said that your future is limitless. No wonder you can comprehend the power of a Heavenly Venerate so quickly. With such decent talent, it's not surprising that you can comprehend it. But I've seen many 9 refinements Earth Lords, but very few can comprehend it so quickly. Some geniuses, when comprehending some powers, will have unique talent. You might be that kind. It wasn't strange for Heavenly Venerate Vast Expanse to see through Lee Tianyun's cultivation at a glance, but his judgment was somewhat wrong. Lee Tianyun being able to comprehend so smoothly was all thanks to the appraisal eye. Many thanks for Senior Vast Expanse's praise. Lee Tianyun thought for a while before asking, "Oh right, Senior Vast Expanse, there's something I wonder if I can ask." "What don't you understand? Feel free to ask." Heavenly Venerate Vast Expanse said, "Although it's just divine will, the memories left here before are still there." Divine will was ultimately divine will. It wouldn't update any memory information, and at the same time, it wouldn't communicate with the main body. "I wonder if there's a saying about 10 refinements Earth Lord?" Lee Tianyun asked. 10 refinements Earth Lord? Heavenly Venerate Vast Expanse was startled, then immediately shook his head and said resolutely, "Completely never heard of it. At most, it's a 9 refinements Earth Lord cultivation. How can there be a 10 refinements Earth Lord?" Heavenly Venerate Vast Expanse said very firmly. Lee Tianyun didn't ask any more. He just wanted to ask these seniors if they had heard of it before. It seemed that their thoughts were already fixed and could not be changed. "Well then, I don't know Senior Vast Han, why did you let me come in? Is it because you want to talk about the recruitment of disciples?" Lee Tianyun said as he brought the topic back to the main point. "Of course, that's not all. If you want to completely possess my treasures and become my in-name disciple, you'll have to pass the final test." The vast Empyrean squinted his eyes and looked into the distance. He smiled and said, "Looks like there are more guests coming." It's been a long time since 2 people came in at the same time. I've never seen 2 people come in at the same time. A figure appeared in front of him. It was the Divine Emperor Yu Qin. It seemed that the Divine Emperor Yu Qin had managed to comprehend it. His speed was only slightly slower than his. When the Divine Emperor Yu Qin came in and saw Lee Tianyun, he was shocked. "I thought you left, I didn't expect you to come in. You're a level faster than me again." Divine Monarch Yu Qin's beautiful eyes were full of resentment. Lee Tianyun was like a demon in her heart, constantly surpassing her, and she couldn't surpass him. She was about to go crazy. She was the reincarnation of an expert, but she was always suppressed. This made her want to vomit blood. She even suspected that the world had changed. How could there be so many geniuses? Luckily, there was only Lee Tianyun. Otherwise, she would really go crazy. Just a little faster. When Lee Tianyun heard her resentful voice, he felt a little awkward. For some reason, she might have thought that he was in debt. "Daddy." At this moment, a little boy rushed out from her bracelet and pounced into the arms of the vast Empyrean. Just like Tutue, he was extremely attached to the vast Empyrean. Good boy, good boy." The vast Empyrean chuckled and patted the little boy's head. When the Divine Emperor Yu Qin saw the vast Empyrean, she greeted respectfully, "Junior Yu Qin greets Senior." She knew the big picture. Seeing that the Senior was here, she didn't say much. What a girl! She is actually a reincarnated God Lord. The higher one's cultivation, the lower the chances of reincarnating with memories. You successfully reincarnated as a God Lord, but you barely survived. The vast Empyreans saw through the divine Emperor Yuqin's situation. The higher one's cultivation, the harder it was to reincarnate. This was going against the heavens. A God Lord was already strong enough, but to reincarnate with such terrifying power, wasn't that going against the heavens? Therefore, many people died here. Yet the divine Emperor Yuqin succeeded. One could only say that his luck was shocking. Just like what the vast Empyrean said, the chances of survival were slim, but he still succeeded. I did pay a price to be able to reincarnate. There were more external forces. The divine Emperor Yuqin said, no matter what it was, to be able to reincarnate successfully, your ability is really impressive. The vast Empyrean looked at the two of them and said, it is fate that the two of you came here together. Letting the two of you understand the power of a heavenly lord is actually a kind of foundation. Even if you can't become my nominal disciple, it will at least be of some help to you in the future. Yi Tianyun nodded. Even if they successfully made it here, they might not become his nominal disciple. The requirements of a heavenly lord were not limited to the way of the heavenly lord. To be able to walk the way of the heavenly lord, it means that your temperament isn't bad. However, the final test is still a test of temperament. The vast Empyrean said, I am a person who places a lot of emphasis on temperament, in other words, the Taoist heart. If the Taoist heart is not stable, talent is useless. Therefore, the way of the heavenly lord does not restrict cultivation. It is not that the higher the cultivation, the easier it is to walk. Only those with a stable Taoist heart can successfully reach it. Yi Tianyun and the divine Emperor Yuqin's Taoist hearts were very stable. They were not impetuous or exaggerated. Naturally, every step was very stable. They did not expect that the final test would still be a test of temperament. They thought that the way of the heavenly lord was long enough, but they still came here in the end. As long as the two of you pass the final test, you will be qualified to become my nominal disciple. When you break through to the heavenly lord, you will be able to contact me. At that time, I will bring you back to the sect. The vast Empyrean smiled faintly. Of course, this is an extremely long matter for the two of you. There are thousands of worlds, and I have set up so many thieving divine lands. So far, the number of people who can become my disciples is less than a handful. Senior Vast, are you saying that there is more than one thieving divine lands? Yi Tianyun quickly caught on to the words. That's right, there is more than one thieving divine lands. They are distributed in different areas. The vast Empyrean smiled and said, the thieving divine lands can be considered a good treasure that I have refined. It can absorb all the energy in the surroundings and fuse it together. However, if the body cannot resist the suction force, it will be swallowed. If you can resist the suction force, you can move freely here. Chapter 11:25. From vast Empyrean's words, it could be seen that he had set up many places, but in the past 10 million years, the number of people who could become his disciples could be counted on one hand. It seemed like the difficulty was astonishing. How easy was it to become an Empyrean? If it was so easy to break through, the streets would have been filled with Empyreans. I created so many heaven-pilfering sacred lands in order to create an excellent trial environment. At the same time, it was to nurture these children. He reached out and rubbed Zuizue and the others' little heads, his eyes filled with kindness. However, there are very few cultivators who can resist this place. This is related to your abilities. It won't be easy to resist this suction force. When you can resist it one day, this place will become a holy land for you to cultivate. Vast Empyrean smiled. This cultivation environment is enough for you to cultivate to the peak of the Lord of Heaven level. Of course, I don't recommend staying here to cultivate, it's better to focus on actual combat. Without further ado, are the two of you ready to undergo the final test of the Tao Heart? Vast Empyrean asked. He didn't explain too much, and it was more or less enough. Heaven-pilfering sacred lands were used to recruit disciples and nurture these treasures. With so many treasures placed here, if they weren't nurtured, these artifact spirits wouldn't be able to grow. Ready? They nodded. Since there was nothing to prepare now, they could just start. If you're ready, then we can begin now. Vast Empyrean stretched out a finger and lightly tapped their heads. At the same time, he said slowly, I don't know the content of your test, but this is a test of the Tao heart that touches the deepest part of your heart. If you pass, you can become my in-name disciple. If you fail, then it can only be said that there's no fate. Vast Empyrean's meaning was clear, there was only one chance. If they failed, then it could only be said that there was no fate and there wouldn't be a second chance to try. Senior Vast, what is success? Yi Tianyun asked. Success is to wake up. If you fail, then let me help you wake up. Vast Empyrean explained, you only have 1 month. If you exceed 1 month, it will be considered a failure. Thus, you should wake up as soon as possible and not remain immersed in it. Understood. Soon after, they felt a ray of light pierce through their bodies. Then they felt as if they had fallen into a vortex. Everything felt so illusory. Swish, swish, swish. A handsome youth was brandishing a spear in his hand. The snowflakes falling from the sky were constantly pierced by his spear. Following that, they turned into more snowflakes that fell down. His body was sturdy, and no matter if it was his talent or his vitality, they were all extremely rich and surging. He was definitely one of the best among his peers. Young master, you're cultivating again. At this time, Xiaoyan came in from outside. When she saw Yi Tianyun's solid muscles, her pretty face blushed slightly and she was a little shy. That's right, I've just finished my training. Yi Tianyun sheathed his spear and circulated his spirit energy to evaporate the sweat on his body, returning everything to its original state. There are people from other sects outside saying they want to duel with you. You want to challenge me? No problem, I'll go out now. Yi Tianyun followed Xiaoyan out. There was already a sea of people outside. Many female disciples of Jade Palace looked at him with admiration and even more fanaticism. Tianyun, you're here. Sure, Shueyun came over. She was as cold as ever, but more than that, she was beautiful. I'm here. Yi Tianyun smiled and said, leave them to me. It's easy. Just like before, I'll beat these troublemakers. Aunt believes in you. Sure, Shueyun smiled slightly. Boy, this time we brought people to challenge you. If we lose this time, this Earth-level martial art belongs to you. If you lose, you have to hand over the Earth-level martial art and the martial art that you lost before. At this time, the elders of other sects stood up and looked at Yi Tianyun angrily. Obviously, this is not the first time he lost. No problem, the premise is that you can really beat me. Yi Tianyun clenched his long spear and flew to the arena. His cold eyes swept across the arena, making everyone tremble. Many people didn't dare to look him in the eye. Don't be arrogant, let me fight you. At this time, someone flew up from under the stage. His cultivation is not weaker than Yi Tianyun. He clenched a giant axe. The sharp blade of the axe is enough to cut everything. As soon as he stepped on the stage, this person didn't wait for Yi Tianyun to reply. He already swept his axe towards him, trying to cut him in half. The overbearing momentum made the people under the stage couldn't help but step back a few steps, not daring to get too close to this arena. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. He held the long spear in his hand and it turned into a cold light that pierced forward, and then heavily hit the giant axe. Ding! The tip of the spear collided with the blade of the axe. The whole spear was slightly bent, but the opponent's attack was bounced off by this spear. Such an overbearing attack was easily deflected by Yi Tianyun's spear. Then, he violently pulled again. The long spear was bent into a half-moon, and it heavily smashed on the opponent's body. But the opponent was directly sent flying by the spear, and he vomited blood in midair. When he fell, he was quickly caught by the opponent's elder. The huge impact still made the elder take a few steps back, and he almost lost his balance. Yi Tianyun swung his long spear, and his momentum was like a rainbow. Young master won again, young master won again. Young master, young master, young master. Young master, young master, young master. The people below shouted with their blood boiling. They felt that Yi Tianyun is a king of victory. No matter who it is, they can be easily defeated. Yi Tianyun suddenly felt a great sense of achievement. This is the feeling he wanted, to be respected by thousands of people, and everything went so smoothly. No one can compare with him, and nothing can disobey his will. The battle quickly came to an end, and Yi Tianyun easily challenged the entire sect and won this amazing battle. Everything went so smoothly, there were no ups and downs, no danger, it was so peaceful. Immediately after, Jade Palace began to rapidly expand its power, quickly rising to the third-grade faction, and then to the fourth-grade empire, dominating a region. Yi Tianyun became a great emperor at a young age, with countless beauties and countless subordinates. Everyone obeyed his call, and no one dared not obey. Everything went so smoothly that he was deeply immersed in it, unable to extricate himself. Chapter 11:26. Yi Tianyun always felt that he was missing something, but he couldn't remember it. He felt like he had forgotten something, and his mind was blank. Heavenly Cloud's great emperor, what are you thinking about? A beautiful woman next to him came over, and there were several other beauties on the side, sprinkling petals on him. Countless petals fell into the water, making the pool smell so fragrant. Countless beauties, a powerful force, everything went smoothly. No matter which force he attacked, the other side quickly surrendered. There were countless opportunities along the way, and he found a lot of treasures and martial arts, which greatly improved his cultivation. But it was so smooth that it made him wonder, is this still me? I seem to have forgotten something. Yi Tianyun frowned. Don't think about it too much, just leave these things to your subordinates. Great Emperor, you have worked hard for so long, it's time to enjoy it. Yes, your subordinates are all powerful people, so you don't need to worry about anything. No matter what, they can easily help you solve it. Yes, and the Snow Cloud Empress is about to give birth, you should accompany her more. One by one, the beauties who served him persuaded him not to think too much, and all kinds of delicious food were constantly stuffed into his mouth, enjoying all kinds of treatment. Yi Tianyun frowned, and he felt that something was wrong. He pushed them away and said in a deep voice, "No, I am not like this at all. I have experienced so many life and death situations along the way, I have experienced so many ups and downs, how can it be so smooth? These are my precious experiences, they are all the process of strengthening my Tao heart, how can it be gone just like that? This is not my world and I don't want to stay here." Yi Tianyun's power broke out, and the pool around him scattered, and he directly rushed out of the palace and flew outside. Outside was a luxurious palace, and the commoners were living very comfortably. Everything was ruled perfectly. But because it was so perfect, there was a big problem. Everything was perfect, and it meant that there were problems everywhere. It was undeniable that this place was so perfect, it was the world he had always imagined. There was no dispute, no struggle, and from the beginning, there was no tragedy. But all of this was an illusion, and what he experienced must not be erased. All of these were his precious experiences. Without these experiences, how could he have such a firm Tao heart? There were many things that the system could not provide. After experiencing so many life and death situations, after experiencing so many dangers, it was all proof that he existed, proof that he was still alive. Heavenly Cloud's great emperor, what happened to you? A group of people flew over from all directions, and when they saw Yi Tianyun rush out, they were all shocked, not knowing what was going on. This also included Shi Shuayun. She flew over with her big belly and stared at him blankly. "Tianyun, what's wrong?" Shi Shuayun flew over and asked. "It's okay." Yi Tianyun reached out and stroked the hair between her eyebrows. He smiled and said, "You're still beautiful no matter what." Shi Shuayun blushed and said embarrassedly, "Scoundrel, there are so many people watching, what are you talking about? Everything was so real, no different from reality." He gently stroked Shi Shuayun's belly and said with a smile, "It's a pity that I can't see the birth of my child again." He glanced around and said with a smile, "Thank you for your company, goodbye." Shi Shuayun grabbed him and said hurriedly, "Tiyun, where are you going? Leave this place, leave this illusory world. Although you are illusory, I still want to thank you for letting me have such a sweet dream. I haven't had such a sweet dream for a long time, thank you so much." Yi Tianyun gently shook off Shi Shuiyin's hand, stepped on the void, and turned into a meteor that pierced through the world, leaving a group of stunned cultivators behind. In the end, the meteor hit the sky fiercely, and the whole world turned into countless fragments. Such a beautiful world was completely gone, turned into countless fragments. Then these fragments completely turned into powder and disappeared from this world forever. At the same time, he suddenly opened his eyes, revealing a firm look. At this moment, Tsuetsue's adorable little face appeared in front of him, staring at him directly. "That's great, I knew that master would definitely wake up." "Father," Tsuetsue guessed correctly. Tsuetsue jumped into Itianyun's arms and said happily, "I didn't guess wrong, I didn't guess wrong." Itianyun looked at Tsuetsue in his arms, then looked at the vast heavenly venerate in front of him, and smiled. "Senior Vast, I passed, right?" Everything felt like a trance, but in reality, it was only for a short while. He only stayed in this sweet dream for a few days. But he stayed in this sweet dream for a few decades, or even 100 years, it was such a long time. "Past, if this is not a pass, no one can pass." The vast heavenly venerate said with a smile, "I didn't expect you to wake up after spending only 3 days. Such a perfect world, but you gave up so easily, it really surprised me. Your Taoist heart is so firm that no one can match it." Yi Tianyun smiled and turned to look at the divine Emperor Yuqin beside him. She, on the other hand, had been in a dream, and no one knew what kind of sweet dream she was having. She kept smiling, feeling that it was very wonderful, and she didn't want to wake up. She sank deeper, very deep, and there is no sign of her waking up at all. The vast heavenly venerate said, "Reincarnation and recultivation may seem like an additional lifetime of memories, but in reality, it is easier for one's Taoist heart to sink completely. After all, the pain she has experienced is undoubtedly more, and she yearns for that kind of beautiful world. It was not that the more experience, the better it was, especially that kind of terrifying experience. The more one experienced, the more pain they felt, and they didn't want to wake up from the sweet dream." "I think she will wake up." Yi Tianyun shook his head and said, "Oh, so sure?" The vast heavenly venerate laughed. "She will definitely wake up." Yi Tianyun answered simply, "Is that so? Then let's wait and see." Many people are stuck at this stage. 1 foot in hell, 1 foot in heaven, it all depends on a single thought. The vast heavenly venerate sighed and continued to taste his tea. Yi Tianyun got up and sat beside him, drinking tea with him, waiting for the divine Emperor Yuqin to wake up. The reason why he believed that the divine Emperor Yuqin would wake up was mainly because these days, he saw that the divine Emperor Yuqin was cold on the inside, but in reality, she was a very kind person. It was just that as time passed, she started to become cold, and that was to protect him. Chapter 1127. After Yi Tianyun got out of the illusion, he drank tea with the vast sky sovereign and didn't do anything else. At most, he drank tea while absorbing the rich astral power around him to increase his experience. He had to admit that it was quite a big increase. The vast sky sovereign didn't say much. He seemed to be waiting for the results of the divine Emperor Yuqin. If the divine Emperor Yuqin passed, the two of them could announce it together. That would save a lot of trouble. Plus, it was only a month. There was no hurry. Anyway, the jade pendant wouldn't be consumed here. It was much safer than outside. This was a special space. There wouldn't be any problems. Days passed. The divine Emperor Yuqin was still immersed in a beautiful dream. He didn't want to wake up. She must have failed. There are only a few days left. Cui didn't stay with the vast sky sovereign anymore. Instead, she liked to stick to Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun had an aura that made her feel comfortable. It was just that he didn't take off the longevity suit. Nonsense. My master will definitely pass. She is very powerful. She passed my test easily. The little boy retorted. He was the weapon spirit of the divine Emperor Yuqin's treasure. Since he followed the divine Emperor Yuqin, he would naturally side with his master. My master is the best. He passed in 3 days. Cui swung her little feet. Yi Tianyun rubbed her little head and said, You really are a bit like my daughter. You should play with my daughter. I think it would be more interesting. Master's daughter is interesting? Cui Cui's eyes lit up. She was looking forward to it. Yi Tianyun smiled. He wanted to go back. Of course. I will take you to see her. In the blink of an eye, his daughter must have grown up a lot. 1 year here was equivalent to many years on the other side. By the time he returned, she would have grown into a beautiful young lady. While they were chatting, the divine Emperor Yuqin slowly opened her eyes. Her beautiful eyes were still filled with nostalgia, as if she still didn't want to wake up. Everything is just a passing cloud. The divine Emperor Yuqin shook his head and sighed deeply. No one knew what she was dreaming about, but it seemed that she had already noticed it. She just didn't plan to come out until the time was right. Master! The little boy pounced on Cui Cui excitedly. He then turned his head and made a face at Cui Cui. See? My master is awake. Tsue turned her head and ignored him. Congratulations on passing this test. It seems like your Dao hearts are indeed very strong. Empyrean Vast Expanse laughed. Your Dao hearts are indeed not bad. You can wake up at any time, but you don't want to. Some beautiful things were just dreams. If I want to turn this dream into reality, I just need to become stronger. Empyrean Vast Expanse is right. The nostalgia in the divine Emperor Yuqin's eyes disappeared in the blink of an eye and was replaced by determination. Yi Tianyun smiled. It was indeed as Empyrean Vast Expanse said. Everything was based on strength. As long as they were strong enough, all their dreams could be realized. Everything was a matter of strength. As long as they were strong enough, what dream couldn't be realized? Both of you have passed my test. This proves that you have strong Dao hearts. You are in line with my expectations. Empyrean Vast Expanse looked at them and said, Do you know why I have been testing your Dao hearts? Talent isn't the key. Diligence isn't the key either. The real key is to have a strong Dao heart. Only then can you ensure that you won't be invaded by demons and strengthen your cultivation heart. Yi Tianyun answered. A strong Dao heart was more important than any talent. Many people couldn't do this. Without a strong Dao heart, many things couldn't be done well. That's right. The Dao heart is especially important in the later stages. Some who reach the later stages of cultivation feel like they are lost in it and can't break through the bottleneck. Or they get addicted to power, causing them to stagnate. The Dao heart is the most important existence. Empyrean Vast Expanse was very satisfied with Yi Tianyun's answer. So many true powerhouses all have a strong Dao heart. Therefore, if you want to become a true powerhouse, you must first have a strong Dao heart. Therefore, when I choose disciples, I naturally need a strong Dao heart. Without a strong Dao heart, there's no way to become my disciple. Now that both of you have a strong Dao heart, it's enough to become my in-name disciples. Empyrean Vast Expanse revealed a smile again. These 2 treasures are yours now. I hope that you treat them well and nurture them. They will definitely be of great help to you in the future. If we don't pass the final test, can we not bring them away? Yi Tianyun looked at Tsue and the others. Of course not. Even if you pass their test, we won't let you take them away. Empyrean Vast Expanse said. Yi Tianyun was a little depressed. If they didn't pass the test, they wouldn't be able to take them away. I know it's a little harsh. First, you have to get their recognition before you can walk to the final step. Empyrean Vast Expanse smiled. All right, we understand. They all knew what he meant. These were Empyrean Vast Expanse's treasures. He definitely couldn't give them to them casually. If they didn't even recognize their own treasures, they wouldn't be able to walk to the final test. As for stripping them of their treasures, it was actually very simple. Although they had already recognized them as their master, Empyrean Vast Expanse was a heavenly venerate. Furthermore, he was their previous master. Taking back their ownership was no problem at all. Of course, other than letting them follow you, I have other things to give you. Empyrean Vast Expanse smiled. Since you are my in-name disciples, I won't mistreat you. Following that, he waved his hand. 5 balls of light floated in the void, spinning in the air. Yi Tianyun looked up and saw that each of the 5 balls of light was a martial art manual. Looking over, they were all superior-grade Heavenly Tao martial arts. It was definitely a huge sum. Empyrean vast expanse was indeed worthy of being a heavenly venerate. Here are 5 superior-grade Heavenly Tao martial arts, enough for you to cultivate to the heavenly venerate level. However, even if they are superior-grade Heavenly Tao martial arts, they might not be able to help you cultivate to the heavenly venerate level. Everything will depend on your own luck. Having a heaven-defying martial art did not mean that there would be no bottlenecks. There would still be bottlenecks. However, with such a powerful martial art, it would have a certain supporting effect. The success rate would definitely be much higher than others. Superior-grade Heavenly Tao martial arts. Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. To him, this was really a treasure. Chapter 11:28. High-grade Heavenly Tao martial arts. Putting aside Yi Tianyun, even the Divine Emperor Yuqin's eyes lit up. She did have a Heavenly Tao martial art, but it was only a low-grade Heavenly Tao martial art. Middle-grade Heavenly Tao martial arts were already her dream martial arts. It was already too difficult to obtain a mid-grade Heavenly Tao martial art, let alone a high-grade Heavenly Tao martial art. Back then, she was a divine monarch, but that didn't mean that all divine monarchs were wealthy enough to possess many Heavenly Tao martial arts. She was only able to obtain a low-grade Heavenly Tao martial art, and that was after paying a hefty price. Now that there were 5 Heavenly Tao martial arts in front of her, she was overjoyed. This was something that she could only dream of. This was a Heavenly Tao martial art. With a high-grade Heavenly Tao martial art, she would definitely be able to advance by leaps and bounds. There are 5 high-grade Heavenly Tao martial arts here, and they are all martial arts that I have created. Every martial art is different, and you can choose according to your needs. Of course, the main factor is your control over your heavenly venerate prowess. As long as you are capable enough, you can take as many as you can. If you can't even get a single one, I will still choose one for you. After all, you are still an in-name disciple. Although your control isn't outstanding, it will improve in the future. The vast heavenly venerate's shocking reply left the divine Emperor Yuqin dumbfounded. Senior Vast. No, Master, you are saying that if I can get it, I can have it all? The divine Emperor Yuqin was dumbfounded. It was as though a pie had fallen from the sky. If he could get his hands on all 5 high-grade Heavenly Tao martial arts, wouldn't he be invincible? That's right. As long as you are capable enough, feel free to take it. The vast heavenly venerate smiled. Yi Tianyun looked at the 5 martial arts floating in the air and smiled, but he didn't say anything. I will give it a try now. The divine Emperor Yuqin couldn't wait to give it a try. It was already a pleasant surprise to be able to get one. Of course, the vast heavenly venerate had said that even if they couldn't get a single one, he would still choose one for them. This meant that there was an absolutely guaranteed opportunity, and they could even choose for themselves. It was truly generous. Immediately, the divine Emperor Yuqin gathered his strength and quickly flew up. He extended his hand and inserted it into the ball of light, wanting to take out the martial art. Who would have thought that as soon as she touched the ball of light, she would be bounced off, flying dozens of meters before landing. This kind of counterforce was considered weak. It only bounced off slightly. However, he failed on his first try and didn't get the martial art easily. Although there was no limit to the number of times, it didn't look good. I have to control my strength well and synchronize it with this energy in order to pass through. This is a more gentle method. If you are strong enough to blow it up, you can also remove it, Heavenly Premier Vast Expanse explained. The divine Emperor Yuqin nodded. She knew that she couldn't succeed on the first try. She had to try a few more times. Following that, she flew over again, not choosing to break through the barrier with brute force. If one were to use brute force to break through, it would simply be a joke in the face of the vast power of a heavenly venerate. Thus, he could only choose the first method. Breaking through with brute force was not advisable at all. It would only make him lose face. The divine Emperor Yuqin was bounced off once again. However, she didn't land. She spun her delicate body and flew over at high speed. Very quickly, she tried again. Pung! She was bounced off again. However, it was obvious that her small hand had already pierced in a little. This proved that there was still a chance and not no chance at all. After trying again and again, the Divine Emperor Yuqin didn't know how many times she had failed. Her delicate hand pierced deeper and deeper into the barrier. It could be seen with the naked eye that she was just a little bit away from touching the martial art. The Divine Emperor Yuqin didn't seem to know fatigue. She kept trying, piercing into the barrier again and again. Finally, her entire palm was inserted into the ball of light. She used her strength to grab the martial art and forcefully pulled it out. I finally got it. Although she had gotten the martial art, the Divine Emperor Yuqin looked battered and exhausted. Even her delicate hand had suffered some injuries. She looked quite pitiful. However, these were all superficial wounds. It would be fine after a little recovery. Compared to this, the martial art was more important. She had to obtain the martial art that she wanted. There were some people who wouldn't be able to obtain a Heaven's Path martial art even if they had to pay with their lives. These were just superficial wounds, so naturally, it wouldn't be a problem. She rested for a moment before continuing on. After all, this was a rare opportunity, so she had to try harder. If you wish to obtain the second martial art, the difficulty will increase. Grasp this opportunity well, the vast heavenly paragon reminded her. As expected, when the Divine Emperor Yuqin tried to obtain the second martial art, she realized that the difficulty was several times higher than before. If it was a piece of paper that she could barely pierce through previously, it would be equivalent to a metal plate now. The increase in difficulty was so great that she felt like puking blood. She thought that after obtaining the first martial art, she would be able to familiarize herself with the control of energy and obtain the other martial arts. Who knew that the second martial art would be even more frightening? If she couldn't pierce through it, she would only be able to obtain one martial art. This was no different from asking the vast heavenly paragon to give them the martial art directly. However, the Divine Emperor Yuqin didn't give up. She kept on trying, determined to obtain two martial arts no matter what. Yun sat by the side, sipping on his tea as he watched her try again and again. In any case, he had plenty of time, so he wasn't in a hurry. Thus, he allowed the Divine Emperor Yuqin to try as she pleased. Very soon, after a long period of trying, the Divine Emperor Yuqin finally obtained the second martial art. This could be considered as a huge breakthrough. In terms of control, there was a huge improvement. Master, you really don't forget to continue testing us. Tianyun shook his head. How could he not know what the vast heavenly paragon was thinking? This was a kind of test. However, a test with rewards was more motivating. From now on, you will be cultivating on your own. Naturally, I'll teach you as much as I can. In the future, you won't be able to see each other unless you break through to the heavenly paragon realm, the vast heavenly paragon said with a smile. Tianyun nodded. The vast heavenly paragon was just a spiritual will, so he wasn't able to teach them too much. From now on, they would only be able to see the vast heavenly paragon when they had a breakthrough in their cultivation. I give up. The Divine Emperor Yuqin finally gave up on the third martial art. She wasn't someone who gave up easily, but she knew that she wouldn't be able to succeed in a short period of time. This third one was too difficult. I feel that I have to break through in my cultivation again and improve in other aspects. But don't you want to try more? Tianyun chuckled. The Divine Emperor Yuqin rolled her eyes at him. Do you think it's that easy? If you're strong, go and try it yourself. Let's see how many martial arts manuals you can get. She knew her limits. Although there was a mountain of treasures in front of her, she knew that she wasn't strong enough. In the end, she still chose to give up. Chapter 1129. Although the Divine Emperor Yuqin took away 2 martial arts manuals, the vast heavenly lord quickly replenished them. These martial arts manuals were created by him, so he could replenish as much as he wanted. All he needed to do was use his divine sense to replenish one of them. Tianyun came under the 5 balls of light and looked up at them. He released the appraisal eye to examine their energy situation. The appraisal eye was almost omnipotent. As long as it was a material object, It could analyze it in detail. I would like to see how many manuals you can get this time. The Divine Emperor Yuqin sat down, took the teacup and gulped down a mouthful of tea. The Heavenly Lord's power is not that easy to break. Do you think it is cabbages that can be picked up from the streets? Master will definitely get a lot of manuals. Cui Cui retorted. Seems like you like him? The Divine Emperor Yuqin looked at her up and down. An artifact spirit. You have just followed him, but you are already so attached to him. How rare. I like Master, so what? Cui Cui said angrily. There's no problem with you liking him. Then how many manuals do you think he can get? The Divine Emperor Yuqin asked. At least 3 manuals. Cui Cui stretched out 3 fingers. No matter what, it was 1 more than the Divine Emperor Yuqin. 3 manuals? The Divine Emperor Yuqin thought for a while and smiled. Seems like you don't know how difficult the 3rd manual is. Previously, I only came down slightly later than him, which means that the gap is not that big. In a situation where the gap is not that big, he can still get 3 manuals? The Divine Emperor Yuqin's deduction was not wrong. She only came down slightly later than Yi Tianyun. The gap was not that big. In this situation, it meant that their standards were about the same. If I say 3 manuals, then 3 manuals. Master will definitely get 3 manuals. Cui Cui said angrily. Quite stubborn? The Divine Emperor Yuqin shook his head. If you lose, will you choose to follow me? I don't reject any treasures. I'm not following. You bastard. Cui Cui didn't dare to look at the Divine Emperor Yuqin in the eyes. She ran to Yi Tianyun's side and stared at her fiercely. The Divine Emperor Yuqin. No, it should be Earth Lord Yuqin. Are you trying to kidnap my artifact spirit? Yi Tianyun hugged Cui Cui and smiled at her. He knew that the Divine Emperor Yuqin was just joking. He just wanted to bully Cui Cui. Of course I miss her. She has so much confidence in you. Don't you want to gamble? The Divine Emperor Yuqin laughed. What about you? Don't you want to try and gamble with that artifact spirit? Yi Tianyun glanced at the little boy and laughed. I won't bet on artifact spirits. If you really surpass me, I'll tell you my secret. How about it? The Divine Emperor Yuqin laughed. Correspondingly, if you lose, I won't ask for much. Just let me rub her. How about that? As she spoke, she even moved her fingers. She wanted to rub Cui Cui hard. She wanted to let her know the consequences of talking nonsense. No problem. Yi Tianyun rubbed Cui Cui's little head. However, I won't let you get your way. Dig out your memories and explain everything to me. You make it sound like you'll definitely get the 3rd book. The Divine Emperor Yuqin rolled her eyes. She still thought that Yi Tianyun wouldn't be able to get the 3rd book. She had already tried it. How could she not know? The vast Heavenly Venerate was also looking over. He wanted to see how Yi Tianyun would perform. After waiting for a while, Yi Tianyun was ready to retrieve the martial arts. Master, you can do it. Cui Cui didn't want to be trampled on by the Divine Emperor Yuqin. She definitely wanted Yi Tianyun to win this round. Yi Tianyun smiled at her. Then, he leaped up and reached his hand into the ball of light. The Divine Emperor Yuqin's eyes brightened. She wanted to see Yi Tianyun get flung away. However, she saw Yi Tianyun reach out and easily take one of the martial arts. What? You succeeded on the first try? The Divine Emperor Yuqin was dumbfounded. She thought that he would have to try many times. Who knew that he would succeed so quickly? The vast Heavenly Venerate squinted his eyes. He was also shocked by Yi Tianyun's precise control. I got the 1st book. After Yi Tianyun kept the martial arts, he leaped up again and reached out his hand. He easily passed through the 2nd ball of light and took the martial arts. I got the 2nd book. There wasn't any obstruction. He got it easily. It felt as easy as drinking water. Previously, the Divine Emperor Yuqin had tried countless times before he finally succeeded. Yi Tianyun succeeded so easily. This made her so depressed that she wanted to vomit blood. How could he succeed so easily? She felt that what Yi Tianyun had reached wasn't the thick shield. Instead, it was a thin layer of paper. One poke and it would break. The vast Heavenly Venerate's eyes narrowed. This had far exceeded his expectations. He could easily surpass the time that the divine Emperor Yuqi needed. Although there wasn't a time limit, it was still shocking to get it so easily. The second book! The second book! Tsue jumped up excitedly and clapped her hands. The divine Emperor Yuqin and the others were stunned and didn't know what to say. Yi Qianyun's eyes narrowed and locked onto one of the martial arts. He leaped up again and stuck his hand in. Once again he easily reached inside and pulled the third book out. There was no difficulty at all. Just like moving clouds and flowing water, everything went smoothly. I got the third book. Yi Qianyun grabbed the martial arts in his hand and smiled at the divine Emperor Yuqin. You lost. This is unbelievable. How did you get it so easily? The divine Emperor Yuqin's eyes widened. She couldn't believe what she had just seen. She always thought that Yi Qianyun wasn't too far away from her. Now, it seemed like she had thought too much. Not only was the difference not big, it was like the difference between heaven and earth. She spent a long time to get the second martial arts book. She couldn't even get the third one. In the end, she chose to give up. Yi Qianyun used only a little bit of effort and easily got it. It could be said that he was an existence that defeated her in every aspect. They weren't on the same level at all. Isn't it the same as you? I have to put my hand in and control the energy to get in. What's the difference? Yi Qianyun shrugged. The reason why he could get it so easily was naturally because of his scouting eyes. At first, when he watched the divine Emperor Yuqin try again and again, he had already observed the situation of the light and recorded the energy. When he personally came here, he could easily succeed according to these standards. As for the fourth book, he had to try a few more times. After all, directly observing from below was far less than the divine Emperor Yuqin's constant testing. Chapter 1130. 3 high-grade Heavenly Dao martial arts were easily obtained. If they were placed in the outside world, it would definitely attract a frenzied slaughter. This was a martial art that could allow one to become a heavenly venerable. How could they not be envious? If the elders of Grade 2 God realms were to find out about this, they would probably go crazy. They basically did not have any high-grade Heavenly Dao martial arts. Even if they did, they would only have 1 or 2. But that was not the main point. The main point was that these martial arts came from the hands of the vast heavenly venerable. What could be better than this? Now that Yi Qianyun had 3 Heavenly Dao martial arts, it would definitely cause a frenzy. 3 books, 3 books. Master, you're really amazing. Tsue was extremely excited. Now, she no longer needed to worry about being trampled on. She could go and trample on the divine Emperor Yuqin. No hurry, I can continue. Yi Qianyun's eyes narrowed. He flew up and reached his hand into the ball of light. But just as he reached in, he was bounced back. Seeing this scene, the divine Emperor Yuqin heaved a sigh of relief. It would really be strange if he could take it down so easily. Seeing that he was bounced back, it proved that the ball of light's protective barrier was still effective. He needed to have better control to take it down. Not bad, not bad. This is only the first attempt, but I can already reach a small part. The vast heavenly venerable's eyes lit up. Even if he failed, he was already halfway there. Yi Qianyun did not stop. He flew over again and stabbed out with his hand. This time, it was a bit longer than before. But he was still bounced back. It was obvious that he could not take it down easily the second time, but he would not give up. He continued to try. He was bounced back again and again, but he improved every time. After 7 to 8 attempts, he finally reached in and took out the martial art. Success, the fourth one. Yi Qianyun fell from the air and smiled as he put away the 4th martial art book. This situation caused the divine Emperor Yuqin to have a complicated look in his eyes. He had only tried for a short while, and he had already easily solved the 4th book. He was much faster than her. Yi Qianyun did not stop. He quickly continued to try the last martial art. Since he was going to take it, he would definitely take all the martial arts. Otherwise, he would not give up. Again, he continued to grab, but his first attempt ended in failure. The 5th martial art was even more difficult to pick up. It was not that the 5th book was too precious, But as the number of martial arts decreased, the difficulty increased. Lee Tianyun tried again and again. Every time he failed, he would notice the energy waves of the light. At the same time, he was able to use the same amount of energy to probe in, but there would be some differences every time, so he had to continue trying. This ball of light was actually very simple. All he had to do was emit the same energy fluctuations as this ball of light, and he would be able to enter. To put it bluntly, he wanted the ball of light to think that he was one of them and then let him in. The principle was very simple, but it required a lot of control to match his own energy waves with the ball of lights. The Divine Emperor Yuqin was temporarily unable to do it, but Lee Tianyun was able to do it. He just needed to try a few more times, and he would be able to succeed. Pang! Lee Tianyun was sent flying, but before he landed on the ground, he had already bounced up in the air. After which, he stabbed his hand into the ball of light and finally penetrated it, grabbing the Heaven Dao martial art within. Come out! Lee Tianyun quickly pulled it out and slowly landed on the ground. Everything was so calm and relaxed. Compared to the pathetic state the Divine Emperor Yuqin was in previously, this was much more relaxed. 5 books, I got 5 books. Suetsue pounced over and hugged Lee Tianyun. She said excitedly, Master, you are really amazing. You actually got 5 books, 3 more than her. She was already filled with admiration for Lee Tianyun, and the vast heavenly venerate couldn't even be bothered with him. You've already shouted many times today. Lee Tianyun rubbed her little head and walked over with a smile. Master, I'm sorry, but I've already gotten all the martial arts. It's all right. It's just that these 5 martial arts are all different. Cultivate them according to your own situation. The vast heavenly venerate smiled, and then his tone turned serious. However, there is one thing you have to take note of, and that is that you absolutely cannot spread it. If you do, you will definitely be punished by the heavenly Tao. Cultivating my martial arts is equivalent to making a vow that you absolutely cannot spread it. If you spread it, you will be punished by the heavenly Tao. There are no exceptions. If it could be spread at will, there would be no need for the heavenly venerate path to exist. They could just spread the martial arts around. Whoever learned it and broke through to the heavenly venerate level would be chosen as a disciple. How simple was that? The vast heavenly venerate wouldn't do that. If it was ruined by others, it was something he didn't want to see. Master, disciple will definitely not spread it. Lee Tianyun and the Divine Emperor Yuqin nodded, their expressions solemn. This wasn't a joking matter. Very well, this is our farewell gift to you. Of course, there is also this heaven-pilfering divine ground. As long as you cultivate well, you won't need those barriers and can easily come in to cultivate. The vast heavenly venerate said. The devouring ability of the heaven-pilfering divine ground couldn't be changed at will. It could only be offset by resisting the devouring. Otherwise, it could only be offset by these treasures. After explaining everything, when they were about to leave, Lee Tianyun suddenly thought of something and asked, Master, do we need to leave our names outside? Leaving their names was naturally the cliff outside. There were a total of 8 names. Oh, that's up to you. It doesn't matter if you leave or not. Those who can climb up here are all geniuses. After they grasp a bit of control, they will leave their names outside to promote themselves. The vast heavenly venerate said with a smile, I didn't ask them to leave their names outside. There's no need for that. It's all a matter of their interest. Lee Tianyun was speechless. So that was what was going on. He thought that they had to leave their names outside, but it turned out that they loved face and felt that doing so would give them face. They would definitely leave their names outside. All right then, I won't leave my name outside. Lee Tianyun looked at the Divine Emperor Yuqin and said, What about you? Do you plan to leave your name outside? Not interested. The Divine Emperor Yuqin's eyes were filled with absent-mindedness. It seemed that he was still immersed in Lee Tianyun's violent martial arts. Then I look forward to you breaking through to the heavenly venerate level. The path of cultivation isn't easy. I hope that your Tao heart will become stronger and stronger. The vast heavenly venerate smiled and waved his hand. 2 rays of light enveloped them and they disappeared. Chapter 1131. When Yi Tianyun and the Divine Emperor Yuqin reappeared at the peak, everyone turned to look at them. After all, they were too conspicuous. How could they not be conspicuous when standing at the highest peak? Are they the powerhouses who have reached the peak of the Heavenly Lord path? Many of them were newcomers, so they had never seen Yi Tianyun and the Divine Emperor Yuqin before. Therefore, they looked at them curiously. Most of them were looking forward to seeing if the two of them would carve their names on the cliff. That way, they would be able to find out what their names were. Who knew that Yi Tianyun and the Divine Emperor Yuqin would fly away and not stay for long? This place was too conspicuous. They didn't like to be high profile, so they chose to leave as soon as they came out. Before Yi Tianyun left, he looked over and saw that the purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and the others had already left. They had stayed at the vast Heavenly Lord's side for a long time. The purple-crowned Lord of Heaven and the others didn't have their jade pendants anymore, so they naturally had to leave. What's going on? They left without carving their names? They were all shocked. They thought that they would leave their names on the cliff. Who would have thought that they wouldn't do that? Instead, they just left. This made them very disappointed. They didn't know what their names were. At least, they would know what they were called when they went out. However, they could only find out by asking around. After Yi Tianyun and the Divine Emperor Yuqin flew away, Tianyun asked, "You lost just now. You are willing to accept your loss. Can you tell me your secret now?" The Divine Emperor Yuqin was silent for a while. Then he looked ahead and said, "Let's go down from there. Since you are a little interested, I will tell you." Soon after, the two of them flew down from the sky and landed in the forest at the side, which could be considered a relatively hidden place. When they found a good place to stay, the Divine Emperor Yuqin looked like he wanted to say something. Yi Tianyun shrugged his shoulders and said, "If you really don't want to say it, then don't." He was only interested to see why a Divine Lord would be willing to work for a Grade 2 God realm, especially when the things he did were not very honorable. Of course, he also wanted to know why they were doing this. There were too many suspicious points, but if these things were not mentioned, he would be too lazy to know. "No, I just want to say that the more you know, the more dangerous it is." The Divine Emperor Yuqin shook his head and sighed. "There's nothing wrong with wanting to know. It's just that with your current qualifications, knowing too much would be dangerous. Even though you've received Master Hao Han's inheritance and obtained so many Heaven Dao martial arts, it's still not worth mentioning in the face of great power. I know this very well. An individual is very insignificant, and when faced with such terrifying power, they can be easily killed. How could Yi Tianyun not know that a divine monarch could easily kill me?" Yi Tianyun said with a smile. How could Yi Tianyun not know that a divine monarch could easily suppress him? With such a huge difference in cultivation, there was no way he could withstand it. Even so, I still want to know more about the situation. Otherwise, I won't even know what's going on if I'm implicated. Taking precautions had always been Yi Tianyun's principle of being cautious. Indeed, it's better to know some things than not to know. The Divine Emperor Yuqin looked at him and said, "I hope you won't reveal what's going to happen next. Actually, the Grade 3 God Realm is currently plotting something, and that is the God Realm War." God Realm War? Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. He could already smell the scent of war. Yes, this God Realm War is not some God Realm Ascension battle. Compared to the God Realm War, the God Realm Ascension battle is just child's play. The God Realm War is a battle between many Grade 3 God Realms, and more than a dozen forces will be implicated in it. This means that once the war breaks out, lives will be lost. Even Grade 2 God Realms will be implicated, while Grade 1 God Realms will be in a better situation. As for the God Realm War, you can imagine how fierce it will be. Many experts will gather together and fight in a frenzy, resulting in countless deaths and injuries. The sky will be filled with experts from the Lord of Heaven, and many divine monarchs, and even heavenly venerables will participate in the war. At that time, earthly monarchs will be so insignificant, and even the Lord of Heaven will be so powerless. It can be said that anyone below the divine monarch level will be cannon fodder. After listening, Yi Tianyun can't help but be moved. Why would there be a God Realm War out of nowhere? Lee Dun-yun frowned and said, "Could it be because of some treasure?" "That's right, they are fighting for the right to enter a grade 4 god realm. It can be said to be a treasure that will allow them to advance." The Divine Emperor Yuqin raised a finger and said, "Among so many grade 3 god realms, only one will be able to obtain the right to advance. The rest are all losers." Lee Tianyun's eyes narrowed, and he said in a low voice, "This is a little too ruthless. There are so many god realms, and only one will have the right to choose? So many people are still willing to join the war?" Of course, these dozen or so god realm forces can no longer take another step forward. They can only improve by entering a grade 4 god realm. Otherwise, it will be meaningless. The Divine Emperor Yuqin shook his head and said, "There are many who participate, but there are even more who don't. So this time, the force you are in is plundering geniuses wantonly just for this war?" Lee Tianyun had a rough idea of what was going on. "That's right, it's still early. There are still thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years before the God Realm War starts. Everything depends on the time when the heavenly treasure descends. It will be an absolute slaughter." The Divine Emperor Yuqin explained. Tianyun thought for a moment, then looked at her and said, "What about you? Have you always been a member of that force? Why does it seem to me that you are not very willing to work for the force you are in?" This could be deduced from the fact that the Divine Emperor Yuqin let her go. "I was able to reincarnate successfully because of their help. Logically speaking, they are my benefactors. I should repay them." The Divine Emperor Yuqin shook his head and said, "Later on, I realized that this is what I deserve. However, I have already made a vow to serve them for 10,000 years. There is no way to change it." Her eyes are full of anger and grief. Although Lee Tianyun doesn't know the details, but he can roughly judge that she was played like a fiddle. This was like the 10,000 star stones that originally belonged to her, but one day, they were stolen from her house. Then, the thief came and said that he would give them to her as a gift to solve her urgent need. She was so grateful that she shed tears and said that she would repay the other party. This was a typical case of being sold, yet she still helped the other party earn money. She had been completely cheated. Chapter 1132. This is indeed a sorrowful matter, Tianyun coughed lightly. He felt that the Divine Emperor Yuqin was truly a tragedy. He was completely fooled by others. He had sworn an oath, and there was no way he could change his mind. He could only choose to obey. The oath could only be broken 10,000 years later. At that time, everyone would have finished participating in the Divine Domain War, and the other party would have achieved their goal. As for whether or not they would seek revenge, it would be up to them once the Divine Domain War was over. If they successfully obtained the qualifications to enter a grade 4 god realm, then the Divine Emperor Yuqin would be nothing. Of course, there was also the possibility that the Divine Emperor Yuqin would die in the Divine Domain War, and everything would end prematurely. There's no such thing as sorrow. This is my own choice. The Divine Emperor Yuqin looked at him and said, "The best thing for you to do now is to hide or keep a low profile. At the very least, don't tell anyone about the martial arts Master Haohan imparted to us. Otherwise, you will definitely be killed." High-grade Heaven's Path martial arts were something that even a grade 3 God Realm expert would covet, much less a grade 2 God Realm expert. Of course, since they had sworn an oath, there was no way they could divulge it. If they did, only death awaited them. However, some of the more sinister ones would rather kill them to force them to divulge some information. Before they were punished by the heavenly wrath, they still had a chance to dig out some information. Greed was boundless. It didn't matter if Lee Tianyun and the others lived or died. All they wanted was to dig out more martial arts. In that case, they are still planning to forcefully recruit people to a grade 2 god realm? Lee Tianyun asked. Our previous method was a little more violent. Some of them directly went down to recruit geniuses. At that time, you will have to participate in the Divine Domain War, the Divine Emperor Yuqin reminded. If you don't want to participate in the Divine Domain War, you have to keep a low profile. Didn't you say that the Divine Domain War would affect grade 2 god realms? Lee Tianyun asked. That's true. The divine Emperor Yuqi nodded. If that's the case, even if I keep a low profile, won't I still be invaded by the flames of war if I stay in a grade 2 god realm? Yi Tianyun asked. This, depending on how remote the power is, there are some that won't be affected, the divine Emperor Yuqin said. If that's the case, then there's a chance that I'll be affected. If that's the case, why should I hide and keep a low profile? Yi Tianyun shook his head. Then you can hide in a grade 1 god domain. That way, you won't be affected. The divine Emperor Yuqin changed his words. Hiding in a grade 1 god domain. You might as well let me hide in Fanyu. That place definitely won't be affected. Tianyun rolled his eyes at her and said, Forget it, there's no need for that. Let nature take its course. The war of the divine realm, how could I miss out on something like this? Do you think that we cultivators can become stronger without experiencing these things? How can you think like that? If your cultivation is too low, you'll just become cannon fodder. The divine Emperor Yuqin said in exasperation. If I'm taken to a grade 3 god domain, won't I be heavily groomed? Heavily groomed, I believe that in 1,000 years, with our strength, we can still occupy a place among the grade 3 god domains. Yi Tianyun looked at her and said, Compared to being captured, I think it's better to come here personally to recruit disciples, right? The divine Emperor Yuqin fell silent. This war was indeed going to happen 1,000 years later, or even 10,000 years later. At that time, their cultivation would have a huge breakthrough, and they would definitely not just be at the Earth Monarch realm. Indeed, no matter what, you can't join my sacred peak god domain. The divine Emperor Yuqin said in a low voice, They will force you to become a slave and completely control you. Sacred peak god domain. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed, especially when he heard that he would be forced to become a slave. That sounded really chilling. That's right, it's the sacred peak god domain. If you were captured back then, you would only become a slave, and you wouldn't even be able to commit suicide. The divine Emperor Yuqin said hatefully, They are just so overbearing, demanding absolute loyalty from their disciples, so they will force them to become slaves. Only those with a bit more value will not be forced to become slaves. Yi Tianyun frowned. It seemed that his choice to escape back then was a very good one. If he hadn't escaped, he would really have been turned into a slave. Of course, if he wanted to escape, those people wouldn't be able to stop him at all. With the teleportation divine stone and the teleportation divine stone, no one would be able to catch him unless they set up a restriction that prevented him from escaping. You've been out for so long. If you can't find me, won't you be punished? Yi Tianyun asked. That won't happen. Anyway, I'm cultivating here, and breaking through to the next level is also my mission. The divine Emperor Yuqin said, My biggest mission now is to restore my original peak cultivation, and then break through to the heavenly venerable realm. To them, this is the most important thing. Everything else isn't important. An additional divine lord was an extremely powerful helper. If there was an additional heavenly venerable, there was no need to even mention it. That person could become an elder and have a very high status and influence. When you reincarnated, what was your cultivation level? Yi Tianyun continued to ask. Late divine lord. As for the specific details, I will have to fully awaken my memories to know. The divine Emperor Yuqin shook his head and said, But no matter what, I have to participate in the divine realm war. This is my value to them. What was it that made you willing to serve them for 10,000 years? Yi Tianyun was a little interested in this. Reincarnated soul grass is very rare. Back then, I found one with great difficulty. I was waiting for it to mature and use it to reincarnate, but I was besieged by several powerhouses, so I was forced to retreat. By the time I returned, the reincarnated soul grass had already been taken away. The divine Emperor Yuqin looked at Yi Tianyun and said, You should have guessed what happened next. My situation was very bad. Because I was in a hurry to break through to a higher level, my body was in a terrible state, and I could collapse at any time. The reincarnated soul grass was my last hope. Since the sacred peak realm of the gods took it out and made such a request, I couldn't possibly refuse. After I was reborn, when I awakened a little of my memories, I went to find the truth. I wanted to see who was surrounding me, and in the end, I discovered that it was the powerhouses of the sacred peak realm of the gods. But it was useless. I had already made a vow, and it was deeply engraved in my soul. I couldn't violate it. Unless the person I made the vow to dies, then I wouldn't have to fulfill it. The divine Emperor Yuqin looked up at Itunyan, his eyes shining, but he immediately shook his head and said, "Forget it. I actually hoped that you could help me. The opponent is a divine lord powerhouse, and he is stronger than I was back then." Chapter 1133. Forget it. Just focus on your cultivation. You won't listen to me anyway. The divine territory war is so scary, yet you still have the mood to go. The divine Emperor Yuqin suspected that Yi Tianyun had gone mad. Most cultivators tried to hide, but Yi Tianyun still wanted to try. It was undeniable that the resources in the third-grade divine territory were amazing. But then again, they threw so many resources at you to work for them. This is the only way to become stronger, isn't it? Yi Tianyun smiled. If you keep hiding in a corner, you won't be able to become stronger. Moreover, even if you can escape this divine territory war, what about next time? Unless you hide forever, you will always be affected. Even if you don't join any divine territory forces, the divine territory war will affect too many forces. Unless you keep hiding, you will definitely be affected one day. Alright, I've been convinced by you. These are all your thoughts. Just don't join the sacred peak divine territory. It's the most disgusting divine territory. After the divine Emperor Yuqin finished speaking, he shook his head. It's about time. I should leave this place. Take care. Thank you for your reminder. I will keep it in mind. Yi Tianyun nodded. The divine Emperor Yuqin's information was very useful. At least this way, if the sacred peak divine territory came to recruit, he would definitely not join. Celestial Lord Yuqin looked at him from head to toe and said with emotion, "You are the only one among all the cultivators I've met who can maintain a passionate heart. I hope you can keep going. Speaking of which, you are now my junior brother. Why don't you call me senior sister?" "Well, I think my results are better than yours. I should be the senior brother, right?" Yi Tianyun shrugged. He would not call the divine Emperor Yuqin senior sister. "I'm older than you." The divine Emperor Yuqin glared at him. "Cultivators don't measure their age, right?" Yi Tianyun looked at her and smiled. "Moreover, you are a woman. Are you sure it's good to say that you are older than others?" As long as it was a woman, even if she was a cultivator, she would not be willing to reveal her age. The divine Emperor Yuqin, on the other hand, claimed that he was older than Yi Tianyun in order to fight for the position of senior sister. "I like it, what do you think?" The divine Emperor Yuqin looked at him with eyes full of ridicule. He even crooked his finger and said, "Come, call me senior martial sister twice." "You want me to call you senior sister?" Yi Tianyun shook his head and smiled. "That's impossible. Unless you break through to the Empyrean realm first, don't make me call you senior sister. On the other hand, if I break through to the heavenly venerable level before you, then you can call me senior brother. How about it? You will break through to the Empyrean realm before me?" The divine Emperor Yuqin looked at him and laughed. "How is that possible? I admit that your abilities are not weak. In fact, you are even stronger than me now. However, that is because my memories have not been completely awakened. If he awakens his memories, his cultivation speed will definitely be far inferior to mine. I have the experience of a god lord. I am only one step away from breaking through to the Empyrean realm. Unless you are also a reincarnated god lord, there is no way you can beat me." Yi Tianyun shrugged and said, "Then, are you willing to make a bet with me?" The divine Emperor Yuqin was right. However, he had the system, so he did not feel any pressure at all. Currently, there was some pressure. That was to break through to the 10th refining Earth Lord. He needed some standards to break through. This was a little difficult, but he believed that it would not take too long to solve. "No problem, let's bet." The divine Emperor Yuqin smiled. "If you beat me, not only will I call you senior martial brother, I will even marry you." "There is no need to marry me. Just call me Senior Marshal Brother. Yi Tianyun waved his hand. He already had Shi Shuayun, so he did not dare to have second thoughts. You are quite arrogant. Do you think I like marrying you? I just want to make it clear that I will not lose. Celestial Yuqin looked at him angrily and said, and you're really unlikable. I'm liked by so many people. Even if you don't like me, you should at least give me some face. Cough cough, that is not the problem. Your charm is not small, and you are talented. It is just that I have a wife. Naturally, I have to be strict. Yi Tianyun explained. Oh, that is really rare. Men like you should have 3 or 4 wives. You have changed my view. The divine Emperor Yuqin looked at him as if he was looking at a rare animal. He smiled and said, it is really rare to see someone as loyal as you. I admire you very much. At least you are not like those stinky men who have 3 or 4 wives. If there is no benefit, I will dump you in the blink of an eye. You are really rare. There are very few geniuses like you who only have 1 wife. The divine Emperor Yuqin shook his head. He felt that Yi Tianyun was really a weirdo. Men had 3 or 4 wives. Mainly, male cultivators were the majority. Naturally, they could have 3 or 4 wives. Especially talented cultivators, they would definitely have more incense. It was very normal for them to have 3 or 4 wives. They should hurry and have more children. It is all right. Yi Tianyun hurriedly waved his hand and said, let's not talk about this topic. I already know the general situation. That is the bet. Let's see who can break through to the heavenly venerable rank first. No problem. The divine Emperor Yuqin looked at him and smiled. It is good to know you. The world of the divine territory is full of changes. I hope that the next time we meet, we will still be alive. Yi Tianyun was stunned. This divine Emperor Yuqin was really a little pessimistic. But he really could not blame her for being pessimistic. In such a chaotic world, those with weak cultivation were like ants. They could be easily crushed. They were just struggling at death's door. After speaking, the divine Emperor Yuqin flew away. She did not stay here for long. Yi Tianyun looked at her leaving figure and was silent for a while. Then, he found a place to meditate and cultivate. He started to absorb the experience here. Although he could not condense a core, it was not a big problem to fill up the experience first. The jade pendant he had could last for another 2 months. With so much time, it was not a problem to fill up the experience. Then, he found a safe place and casually sat down to absorb the experience. As time passed, after he absorbed crazily for more than half a month, a pleasant voice was finally heard. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Tianyun for successfully reaching the experience required to level up. Do you want to choose to break through to the Lord of Heaven now? No need. Yi Tianyun did not even think about it and directly rejected. He wanted to break through to the 10 refining Earth Lord. Just breaking through to the Lord of Heaven was not enough to satisfy him. Core, I am just missing a core. Tianyun looked around to see if there was a core here. To build more cores in one's body, the simplest and crudest way was to absorb another core, just like before. Chapter 1134. As Yi Tianyun carefully examined his surroundings, he quickly discovered that there was an incomparably huge core buried deep underground. It would be impossible to say that there was no core here. The sky-pilfering sacred ground absorbed all the energy in the surroundings, including the core, and continuously condensed it to make the sky-pilfering sacred ground even stronger. Perhaps the sky-pilfering sacred ground wasn't the best, but the core was the most important thing for him. There is indeed a core, but it will be quite difficult to go down. Tianyun squinted. The sky-pilfering sacred ground had been blessed by vast heavenly venerate, so it would be quite difficult to break the restrictions set up by vast heavenly venerate. Even a heavenly venerate might not be able to break it. If it was so easy to break, the sky-pilfering sacred ground would have been occupied long ago. How could there still be a spirit consciousness here? Although it was difficult, one shouldn't forget that vast heavenly venerate had transmitted his own energy to them. Even if he couldn't dig out the core, he could at least get close to it. Soon after, he did not do anything else. He immediately took out a weapon, aimed at the ground, and began to madly dig. However, just as he dug a small hole, it started filling up rapidly, as if it had an extremely strong healing ability. This allowed him to quickly fill up the hole he dug. He simply didn't have time to dig any further. This healing speed was even faster than his digging speed. What the hell? Is this place that hard to break? Lee Tan-yun frowned. At this rate, if he continues to dig, he will be buried in the ground. Of course, this wasn't too difficult for him. He would be able to come out with a teleportation. Looks like I have to put in more effort. Although it's a little troublesome, at least I can go down. Lee Tian-yun started digging frantically, his speed increasing several times. A decent reincarnation level weapon was reduced to a shovel, and it kept digging crazily. The soil that he dug up was directly moved into his inventory. He originally wanted to move it into his inner world, but he couldn't, so he could only move it into his inventory. After the teleportation, he began to dig frantically again. Under his rapid digging, he managed to dig a path down. However, the back of the path was quickly filled up, trying to wrap him up. Lee Tian-yun wanted to give it a try. He wanted to see if it was faster to wrap the soil or if he could dig faster. From the looks of it now, he was the one who dug faster. However, the path behind was blocked bit by bit. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to continue digging. After all, the soil that was dug out had to be pushed to one side. But there was no way back, and he couldn't stuff it into his storage space, so he couldn't dig at all. Only his special inventory was able to store the soil. He had to admit that this soil was very precious. After he left this place, he would try to transfer it into his inner world. "Master, what are you doing?" Cui Cui transformed and appeared beside him, curious about what he was doing. "Can't you see? I'm digging a hole. It's just that the soil behind me is a little troublesome. It keeps moving closer," Lee Tian-yun explained as he dug. "So that's how it is. It's very simple. I'll help Master block it." As she spoke, Cui Cui released a burst of light. The healing ability of the surrounding began to slow down and even stopped. When Lee Tian-yun saw this, he was stunned. "You still have this ability?" "Of course, I can revive withered elixirs, but at the same time, I can also absorb the vitality around me." Cui Cui smiled proudly. "Master, don't you think I'm amazing?" Not bad at all." Lee Tian-yun was very surprised. This way, he wouldn't have to rush. Especially in the later stages, he couldn't even sit down and absorb it. He had to absorb it while digging. With Cui Cui's help, the surrounding soil no longer healed quickly, which made him feel much more relaxed. After digging wildly all the way, he successfully reached the core at the bottom. This place was indeed filled with restrictions. They were densely packed, and each of them was very profound. The most important thing was the power of a celestial venerable. This was the most difficult to break. If one wanted to break the restrictions, it would take a little effort at most. However, a celestial venerable's power could easily send one flying if one attacked casually. If it was serious, it could even directly crush the intruder and cause him to explode. Lee Tian-yun looked up and down at the thick energy. It was no different from what he had imagined. It was all celestial venerable's power. "Very good, let's start analyzing." Lee Tian-yun's appraisal eye began to analyze the fluctuations of the energy. He wanted to thoroughly integrate with this energy. Soon he roughly analyzed it. It was no different from the ones he had encountered before. Immediately, Lee Tian-yun stretched out his hand and his whole body drilled into the energy. After passing through the energy layer, the first thing that came into view was the gigantic core, which possessed an extremely vast amount of life force. Compared to the life cores he had encountered before, this was dozens of times stronger. The energy it contained was even purer and more astonishing. "Not bad, it's here." After entering, Lee Han-yun sat down in meditation and began to absorb this core. Tsuei was next to him. When she saw this thing, her eyes lit up and she also began to absorb crazily. One big and one small, they both sat down to absorb the core's energy without holding back. After Lee Tian-yun absorbed it, this pure core's energy began to flow into his body. Under the influence of his star power, the surroundings gradually condensed into planets and gathered bit by bit. If he wanted to keep two planets in his body, he had to first achieve a state where they didn't conflict. This was a life core to begin with. Now that he was absorbing a life core, it was rare for there to be a conflict at the same level. If it was a fire element core, he wouldn't be able to absorb it. Fortunately, this wasn't a fire element core. Otherwise, he would have come here for nothing. However, before Itianyun came down, he knew that it wouldn't be a fire element core. It wasn't because of the appraisal eye, but because there were so many elixirs around and the rich vitality. How could it be a fire element core? In this state, he gathered bit by bit and the planets in his body began to form slowly. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Very soon, not too much time was needed, and a huge planet was successfully formed in his body. When he was about to continue strengthening it, the original life core began to shake and the entire world in his body showed signs of collapsing. What's going on? Chapter 1135. Itianyun thought that everything would go smoothly. He did not expect that it would not go smoothly at all. It could even be said that it was very bad. The original world in his body began to collapse rapidly. It was obvious that if it continued to accumulate, it would cause a conflict. When that happened, the two planets would explode. When that happened, his body would directly explode. Even if he did not die, he would become a cripple. Without the world in his body, it was equivalent to his cultivation being crippled. He would have to start over again. Immediately, he made a prompt decision and immediately shattered the condensed planets, turning them into countless amounts of life energy that circulated in his body. Very quickly, the original life core absorbed them and expanded rapidly, becoming incomparably huge. After absorbing so much life core energy, how could it not expand? However, this meant that it had failed. It was a complete failure. Originally, he thought that under the situation where the attributes were the same, it was impossible for him to fail. It was very simple to condense a planet. Who knew that he was wrong? It was not that simple. It won't work at all. Planets with the same attributes cannot coexist. Itianyun frowned, trying to figure out what exactly had gone wrong. After thinking carefully, he suddenly slapped his thigh, startling Tsuetsue so much that she jumped up. What's wrong? What happened? Tsuetsue stared at him blankly. She had no idea what had happened. Nothing. Titsue, can you still cultivate here? Itianyun saw that her entire body was emitting a green light. It seemed that her condition was not bad. After absorbing the life core here, her body had evolved. However, this evolution process was extremely long. It was impossible for her to advance after nurturing here for a period of time. She had stayed here for so long, but she had not evolved. It was impossible for her to advance after staying here for a period of time. Of course I can. I love this kind of rich life energy. It's so comfortable to cultivate, Tsuetsue said. But master, why did you make such a big fuss just now? I just thought of something and suddenly shouted. Continue cultivating. Itianyun gestured for her to sit down. Only then did Tsuetsue sit down again and continue cultivating. Naturally, what Itianyun was thinking about was the matter of condensing a planet. Without a doubt, condensing a second life planet was extremely undesirable. After failing, he thought of a relatively simple solution, which was to change the attribute. The life core was actually equivalent to the wood element. If he wanted to condense a planet that would not restrain each other, he would have to choose the water element. This meant that he needed to find a water attribute core. If he condensed it like this, it would definitely not restrain each other. Instead, it might even complement each other. In the state of mutual promotion, there would definitely be no effect. He guessed that this situation was most likely because his inner world couldn't condense the same type of core. It needed to have a different attribute. If they were the same, they would repel each other. This was just like how a mountain couldn't contain two tigers. They definitely couldn't let one go, or else they would definitely be rejected. Water element core, huh? Itianyun frowned. He didn't even know where to find such a thing. There were many planets with cores, but they were all not weak sections. It was impossible for him to casually absorb the energy of the core. He thought for a while, and his eyes lit up. The Heavenly Spring Divine Realm. Maybe there is. The name wasn't randomly given. The Heavenly Spring Divine Realm might very well have a water element core. However, how to ask was another matter. I'll go ask after everything is over. Lee Tianyun didn't choose to leave immediately. Instead, he continued to cultivate. Although he had enough experience, he could continue to accumulate, especially to strengthen the core in his body. Why was he in such a hurry to leave? The jade pendant on him could last for another 2 months. It wouldn't be too late to leave after he finished cultivating. In the next 2 months, he continued to absorb the core's energy crazily, constantly nourishing the planet in his body. Then it grew bigger and bigger, looking many times bigger than before. After about 2 months, he felt that it was about time to leave, so he teleported out of the core area. At the same time, he set up a coordinate here. In the future, when he came back to cultivate, he could use the teleportation god stone to relax. He didn't need to continue digging. After coming out, before Lee Tianyun prepared to leave, he thought for a while and finally put the jade pendant away. As soon as he put the jade pendant away, a violent devouring force sucked him out. Especially under his feet. It was as if something was pulling out the star power in his body. In the blink of an eye, a small part of Lee Tianyun's star power was drained. Such a strong suction force. It's much more domineering than the martial arts I used before. Lee Tianyun gasped. After trying it out, he immediately felt how strong the suction force was. No wonder even the Lord of Heaven couldn't resist it easily. As for divine lords, the effect of cultivating here wasn't great for them. Therefore, this place could easily suppress those below the Lord of Heaven. Without the jade pendant, one would really be sucked dry. Lee Tianyun was now frozen on the ground. He couldn't even move a step. No wonder he had to leave before the effect of the jade pendant disappeared. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to escape. He would be sucked dry directly. When that happened, he would be sucked dry without being able to escape. It was really hopeless. Then Lee Tianyun quickly took out the jade pendant and covered himself with a shield to protect himself. Then, he could move his legs and move freely. It seems like I still can't resist it. Lee Tianyun shook his head. He thought he could resist the devouring force, but it seemed like he couldn't for the time being. He had to break through again. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to resist the terrifying devouring force. After personally experiencing the suction, Lee Tianyun didn't want to stay here any longer. When he left the Heavenly Thief's sacred land and flew in the direction of the teleportation formation, he immediately saw someone flying in his direction. From their clothes, it was obvious that they were guards of the Heavenly Spring's sacred land. Lord Tianyun, Elder Go Huang ordered me to wait for you here. He hopes that you can find him when you return, the guard explained. Lee Tianyun's eyes froze. It was obvious that the news had spread. He wasn't surprised that Elder Go Huang was looking for him. Okay, I'll go now, Lee Tianyun said. Please follow me. The guard was very respectful. It was obvious that he had also heard something. Experts with strength would always be respected by others. Chapter 1136. As soon as Lee Tianyun came out, he was immediately called to the elder. He was not surprised at all. The Purple Crown Lord of Heaven would definitely tell him when he went out. After all, he only had a month's time to stay. Now that he had such a long time, he definitely needed to go out and pass the message. Otherwise, everyone would think that Lee Tianyun had died inside. Naturally, he needed someone to pass the message. Under the guidance of the guard, he quickly returned to the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm. His journey was smooth, and he arrived at the Elder's Temple. This was a very important place, and not just anyone could enter. With the guidance of the guard, he went straight to the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm. This is the Tianyun Lord that Elder Go Huang wants to see. Where is Elder Go Huang? The guard asked. The elders are having a meeting. But since you're here, I'll bring you over now. Another guard nodded and led Lee Tianyun inside. They're bringing me in for this meeting? Lee Tianyun was puzzled. Yes, you're the person that the elder wants. Even if it's a meeting, you have to be brought in. The guard thought about it and added, the elder said that you have to be brought in no matter the situation. Tianyun nodded. It seemed that Elder Go Huang really valued him. But thinking about it, he could climb to the peak of the Heavenly Lord path. How could they not value him? If they didn't, they must have been kicked in the head by a donkey. Under the guidance of the guard, he walked into the main hall. He didn't see anyone, but the voices came from inside. This time, one of our human disciples has successfully ascended to the Heavenly Lord path. It seems that he has a high chance of becoming a Heavenly Lord in the future. You said it's possible. How did a human climb up the mountain? Does he have some special ability? I don't think so. Even if a human climbs to the Heavenly Lord path, it'll be hard for him to break through in the later stages. He'll still be stuck on the road, unable to move forward. How is it impossible? He's from our God Creation Palace. I've seen his ability. He's very strong. He won't have any pressure to become a Heavenly Lord. Tianyun could tell that one of the voices belonged to Elder Dong Yun. As a member of the God Creation Palace, Elder Dong Yun would definitely come for the meeting. Plus, he was an elder. How could he not come? Go in. The guard did not care about the content of the conversation. Elder Go Huang's status was extremely high, and he would definitely be the leader. Immediately, Tianyun lifted his foot and walked inside. As soon as he stepped through the door, all eyes gathered on him. To be honest, he felt a little awkward. He really didn't like walking in while others were discussing, especially when the person in question was himself. This way, if he came in, there would definitely be a lively discussion, and it would be directed at him. Earth Lord Tianyun is here. Elder Go Huang's eyes lit up. They had been waiting for a long time, and finally Tianyun was here. They were in no hurry to start the meeting, but since Tianyun hadn't come out for so long, they decided to bring it forward. The meeting was only halfway through, and Tianyun had returned. He was pleasantly surprised. Those who didn't know Tianyun got to know him again. They stared at him as though they wanted to see through him. Earth Lord Jiulian. One of the elders blurted out. At this time, the other elders were shocked. They had seen Earth Monarch Jiulian before, but this was definitely the first time they saw a human Earth Monarch Jiulian. Of course, it wasn't that Tianyun was the only human who had broken through to the Earth Lord Jiulian. It was just that they had only seen Tianyun, the only human who had reached the Earth Lord Jiulian level. It was evident that there were very few Earth Lords Jiulian in the human race. The human race wasn't very talented, so few could reach the Earth Lord Jiulian level. There were very few Earth Lords 8 Lien, let alone the Earth Lord Jiulian level. Now, Tianyun was standing in front of them. Not only had he completed the Heavenly Sovereign Path, but he had also broken through to the Earth Lord Jiulian level. 2 halos surrounded him, and he was very eye-catching in the eyes of the elders. Especially Elder Shao Tian. His eyes were cold. He didn't think that the one who had angered him would be such a genius. Just these 2 halos were enough to crush many geniuses from the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm. They couldn't compare to him. It really is the Earth Lord Jiulian level. How long has it been? You've already broken through to the Earth Lord Jiulian level. Elder Dong Yun was pleasantly surprised. He had to say that Tianyun had made him proud. He had just joined, and he had already achieved such a result. How could he not be surprised? This is all because of Elder Go Huang's care. If I didn't steal from the Heaven Divine Realm, I really wouldn't have been able to break through to the Earth Lord Jiulian level. Tianyun smiled and flattered. Not at all. Stealing the reward from the Heaven Sacred Land was something that was promised to us. Everything is what you deserve. Elder Go Huang beamed with joy. I didn't expect you to break through again in such a short time. It's not easy to break through to the Earth Lord Jiulian level. All the elders had changed their opinion of Tianyun. The Earth Lord Jiulian level was a golden signboard. It couldn't be bad. Even those with good talent might not be able to achieve it. This meant that those who broke through to the Earth Lord Jiulian level, no matter how trashy their race was, couldn't be weak. Some elders who didn't think highly of the human race had ugly expressions. Especially Elder Shao Tian, who disliked the human race. But now was not the time to say anything sarcastic. Some things couldn't be refuted, such as the standard of the Earth Lord Jiulian level. I heard that you completed the heavenly sovereign path. What reward did you get? Elder Shao Tian went straight to the point. This was the most important thing to them. Although there were 8 geniuses who successfully passed the heavenly sovereign path, the embarrassing thing was that none of them were from the heavenly spring divine realm. Even the other 4 divine realms didn't get any. Those were obtained by geniuses from the grade 3 divine realms or by geniuses who paid a price to enter. To put it bluntly, Yi Tianyun was the first disciple from the heavenly spring divine realm to complete the heavenly sovereign path. This honor was really enviable. I got a bit of martial arts inheritance. Yi Tianyun said with a half-truth. He couldn't say that he didn't get anything. With so many eyes watching, who would believe him if he said he didn't get anything? Especially when he used it in the future, people would definitely see through it. He might as well admit it. As long as he didn't say it, he would get 5 books. What is it? Quickly take it out and let me see. Elder Shao Tian's eyes lit up. Elder, it's impossible for this junior to take it out. When I received this inheritance, I swore an oath that I would absolutely not reveal it, Yi Tianyun replied in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. Chapter 1137. Yi Tianyun's explanation made many elders deeply feel that way. This kind of situation was not strange. If one could casually impart martial arts, one would know how many people obtained this inheritance just by looking at the names engraved on the cliff. If these people who obtained the inheritance could impart it, they would have already imparted this inheritance a long time ago. In fact, there was no news at all, proving that it could not be imparted to the outside. This indeed can't be imparted to the outside. Just roughly talk about the situation inside. Elder Go Huang was a little interested in the inner workings of the heavenly venerate path. The other elders looked over one after another, their eyes all revealing some interest. Elder Shao Tian's gaze became gloomy instead, as if thinking about something. Below, I encountered heavenly venerate vast expanses divine sense. It's roughly the meaning of recruiting disciples. Whoever can climb to the end and pass the test can become his in-name disciple. In the future, if one breaks through to heavenly venerate, they can become an official disciple, Yi Tianyun answered truthfully. This was not some secret. Moreover, if he did not say it out, they definitely would not believe it. He said that it was an impossible thing to go one round inside. Nobody would believe it. Heavenly venerate vast expanses in-name disciple. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Everyone exchanged glances. They did not expect that there was such a background there. Because they did not have a disciple climb to the end, they never knew the truth in this aspect. It was really a kind of tragedy. Heavenly venerate vast expanse. I've heard of this heavenly venerate before. He's an extremely famous heavenly venerate. Among so many heavenly venerates, not the strongest, but he can at least rank in the top 5. One of the elders said solemnly. Top 5 heavenly venerates? Everyone's eyes constricted. Heavenly venerates were out of reach for them. Even if they broke through to heavenly venerate, they would at most be at the bottom level. Now, heavenly venerate vast expanse could actually rank in the top 5. This was still among all the known heavenly venerates. To be able to rank in the top 5, it was already not something that they could imagine. Heavenly venerates were already powerful enough. To be able to charge into the top 5, it could be seen that their strength was extremely formidable. Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. He did not expect that the background of this master of his would be so astonishing. The top 5 Empyrean existences could be said to be able to walk unhindered among Empyreans. So you're saying that the heaven-pilfering sacred ground was established by Empyrean vast expanse? Elder Go Huang and the others finally understood the situation. Yes, the heaven-pilfering sacred ground was created by Empyrean vast expanse. Moreover, among so many god realms, he didn't just place one heaven-pilfering sacred ground. Instead, he placed several heaven-pilfering sacred grounds in order to select disciples. Yi Tianyun explained. Only now did the elders suddenly realize what was going on. So there was actually such a situation. So that's how it is. Looks like you've already become heavenly premier vast expanses in name disciple? The eyes of Elder Go Huang and the others lit up. Yes, this disciple has already become Heavenly Premier Vast Expanse's disciple in name. However, this disciple still needs to break through to the Heavenly Premier Vast Expanse's official disciple, Tianyun said. So you're only an in-name disciple. I thought you were already an official disciple. You're only an in-name disciple. As long as you haven't broken through to the Heavenly Premier Vast Expanse, you can't be considered an official disciple. What a waste of time. Elder Xiaotan leaned against his chair, feeling disdainful. The difference between an in-name disciple and an official disciple was too big. The life and death of an in-name disciple had nothing to do with Empyrean Vast Expanse. It meant that if he couldn't even find his master, how could he rely on him? Only official disciples could enjoy such treatment. If he became an official disciple, he could do whatever he wanted. Tianyun's eyes flashed. He smiled and said, "Yes, this disciple is slow-witted. Through hard work, I barely became an in-name disciple. I became the first junior in the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm to reach the finish line and become an in-name disciple." Impudent. Elder Xiao Tian's face darkened. He slammed the table and said angrily, "What do you mean by that?" Tianyun's words had a hidden meaning. An in-name disciple didn't have a backer, but at least he was the #1 person in the Heavenly Spring Divine Realm. It was better than Elder Xiao Tian's side. If none of them reached the finish line, wouldn't they be even more trash? Elder Dong Yun suddenly laughed. He looked at Elder Xiao Tian and said, "Elder Xiaotan, I was asking you what you meant by that. So what if you're an in-name disciple? At least you received a Heavenly Venerate's inheritance. In the future, you will have a chance to become a Heavenly Venerate. And Elder Xiao Tian, the in-name disciples that you said aren't worth mentioning, I wonder how many of your disciples can reach the finish line?" Elder Dong Yun couldn't help but quarrel with Elder Xiao Tian. Tianyun was his disciple. He would definitely side with his own disciple. Moreover, ordinary people couldn't receive such an honor, and Elder Xiao Tian was still mocking him. If his disciple completed the Heavenly Venerate path, he would have told everyone. How could he still feel bored? "Elder Dong Yun, I'm just stating the facts. Do you think it's easy to become a Heavenly Venerate? Even if you receive a Heavenly Venerate's inheritance, you might not be able to break through." Elder Xiao Tian said coldly. "That's true. At least compared to others, you have a greater chance." Elder Dong Yun similarly retorted coldly. All right, stop arguing." Elder Go Huang looked at them and said in a solemn voice, "Making a ruckus here, where's the propriety? Being able to obtain an Heavenly Venerate's inheritance is already pretty good. Looks like we have to increase our grooming efforts and let our disciples walk the Heavenly Venerate path. When they reach the end, they can obtain an Heavenly Venerate's inheritance. What a pity. If we could walk, that would be for the best. Divine Lord cultivation could not walk the Heavenly Venerate path. The Heavenly Venerate path similarly had restrictions. If the cultivation was too high, there was no way to walk it. If they could walk it, they could probably walk the Heavenly Venerate path. Elder Xiao Tian's eyes lit up. In that case, we can all get a little more of the distribution on the jade pendant? Elder Xiao Tian, didn't you say that you weren't interested previously? Isn't it just an in-name disciple and not an official disciple? What's the use of taking it? Elder Dong Yun circled back to the topic. Elder Xiao Tian's expression was livid, and he said in a solemn voice, "Elder Dong Yun, I'm thinking for my disciples. Didn't Elder Go Huang say just now that even if it's an in-name disciple, it's at least an Heavenly Venerate's inheritance? I want to let my disciples see the world. Could it be that I can't?" Yin shook his head repeatedly as he listened by the side. This Elder Xiaolan was sour enough. When it was his turn to have a chance, he was like a dog, pouncing over immediately. Fine. Everything is up to you." Elder Dong Yun shot a glance over at Tianyun and nodded at him, indicating that with him around, he absolutely would not let Tianyun suffer any grievances. Chapter 1138. Elder Dong Yun would definitely help Tianyun get back at him. Although it wasn't appropriate for Yi Tianyun to go against an elder, he was still an elder and didn't care about such things. Elder Go Huang felt helpless as he watched from the side. However, Elder Xiao Tian had indeed gone overboard. Seeing Elder Dong Yun's attitude, Elder Xiao Tian was about to explode from anger. He immediately thought of something and said, "Oh right, I almost forgot to mention. Prepare for the competition in the palace. I wonder if Elder Dong Yun will let earthly monarch Tianyun participate? After completing the way of the Heavenly Lord, his ability shouldn't be too bad, right? Wouldn't it be a pity if he isn't allowed to participate?" Yi Tianyun frowned and didn't know what Elder Xiao Tian was planning. Why did he suddenly bring up the competition in the palace? However, the palace was indeed going to hold a competition soon, and that was the smithing competition. There had always been such a rule, and it wasn't because of his arrival that there was an additional rule. He just joined not long ago and hasn't grasped the abilities of the Palace of Gods. How can he participate so quickly? Elder Dong Yun immediately retorted. Yi Tianyun had indeed just joined and hadn't fully familiarized himself with the Palace of Gods before he was dragged to steal from the Empyrean's sacred land. It meant that he hadn't even grasped the forging martial arts that the Palace of Gods was proud of and had to participate. It was undoubtedly a disadvantage. It was undeniable that the way of the Heavenly Lord's inheritance was not bad. Elder Dong Yun didn't know what it was, but it definitely wasn't a forging martial art. Heavenly Lord Vast Expanse didn't specialize in forging, but in combat, which meant that he didn't have any of the three major professions. That might be the case, but isn't there still some time? Since he is Heavenly Lord Vast Expanse's in-name disciple, he must have astonishing talent, right? If he doesn't even dare to participate, wouldn't he be letting down his reputation? Elder Xiao Tian started to praise Yi Tianyun to death. If he didn't participate, he would be letting down Heavenly Lord Vast Expanse. What do you mean there's some time? He only has 1 or 2 months. How can he learn it? Elder Dong Yun was enraged. Elder Xiaoan, you are abusing your position to take revenge. What abusing my position to take revenge? I just want to see his potential. Elder Dong Yun, you can't speak carelessly. Elder Xiao Tian looked at Yi Tianyun and smiled. How about it, Heavenly Monarch Tian? Are you willing to accept this challenge? Don't worry, even if you lose, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it's just to try and gain some experience. Yi Tianyun looked at him and said with a faint smile, Elder Xiaoan, well said. Then I will definitely participate. Don't worry about that. He didn't know what Elder Xiao Tian was thinking, but what was wrong with participating? It was not a problem for him at all. Alright. Elder Xiao Tian let out a loud laugh. His eyes were filled with success as he looked at him and said, now that's ambition. Everyone heard it, Earth Monarch Tianyun will be participating. Elder East Cloud, you can't stop him from participating. Elder Dong Yun's face sank. He didn't expect Yi Tianyun to take the bait. Don't worry. Since he has agreed, he will definitely participate, Elder Dong Yun said solemnly. With your guarantee, it's good enough. Elder Xiao Tian's eyes were cold as if he could already see the result. Elder Go Huang, who was watching from the side, felt very helpless. These two elders had been fighting each other all this time, and they had not stopped at all. Let me in, let me in. At this moment, a shout came from outside. What's going on outside? Elder Go Huang frowned. They were in a meeting, so why was it so noisy outside? Elder. At this moment, a familiar figure rushed in from outside. Yi Tianyun turned his head and looked. Wasn't this the cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven that he had left far behind? He even called himself the cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven. Those who hadn't heard of him would think that he could fly. Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven? When the elders saw him, they all recognized him. Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven's talent wasn't bad. Among the many Lord of Heavens, he could be considered to be at the top. Because his talent was good, his status naturally wasn't bad. Therefore, he was allowed to enter the Elder's Temple. However, no matter how good his status was, he couldn't barge in casually. Otherwise, it would be disrespectful to the elders. Cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven, what's the matter? Elder Go Huang frowned. He felt that cloud-drawing Lord of Heaven was a little rude. However, he still patiently asked what he wanted to say. Otherwise, why would he be in such a hurry? You really are back. When Cloud-Drawing Lord of Heaven saw Yi Tianyun, he said to Elder Go Huang, Elder Go Huang, I heard that he has successfully reached the celestial sovereign path. I highly suspect that he used some treasure, or that the elders gave him some treasure. I feel that it's a little strange, so I specially came to ask. Yi Tianyun was instantly speechless. He had seen stupid people, but he had never seen someone so stupid. He was already here, yet he still said such stupid things. The elders looked at each other. They had no idea what he meant. Then, they looked at Elder Dong Yun, waiting to see what he had to say. Cloud-Drawing Lord of Heaven, are you here to be funny? If I had such a treasure, why didn't I give it to others? Why did I give it to a new disciple? Elder Dong Yun's face darkened. He felt that Cloud-Drawing Lord of Heaven was here to be funny. But if he didn't have any treasure, how could he have reached the celestial sovereign path? Cloud-Drawing Lord of Heaven looked at Yi Tianyun and said in a low voice, and he's a human. He must have used some treasure. Even if the elders didn't give it to him, he must have used it himself to climb up. Therefore, I hope that he will hand over the treasure and let the disciples share it. He can't have any selfish motives. This is for the development of the heavenly spring holy realm. Cloud-Drawing Lord of Heaven's words were grand and majestic. He directly raised the status of the entire heavenly spring holy realm. Yi Tianyun didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard it. He originally thought that these elders were enough to make things difficult for him. He didn't expect that the one who would make things difficult for him would be this idiot. Hearing this, the elders looked at Yi Tianyun with strange expressions. They didn't know how Yi Tianyun would explain it. I think that having this treasure is already heaven-defying. I don't know what kind of treasure can suppress vast heavenly venerate's great array, but if there is, why didn't I take the heaven-stealing divine ground that vast heavenly venerate set up? Yi Tianyun retorted lightly. What vast sky sovereign? Cloud-Drawing Lord of Heaven didn't know the reason and felt that it was a little strange. Elder, I think that Cloud-Drawing Lord of Heaven is a little delusional. I believe that everyone went to the vast sky sovereign path. What kind of treasure do you think I have that can subdue vast sky sovereign? Yi Tianyun felt that it was ridiculous. In his opinion, Cloud-Drawing Lord of Heaven was asking to be humiliated. Originally, everything was over. Now, he still came up to cause trouble. Wasn't this embarrassing the elders? Chapter 1139. This was the most ignorant thing about the Lord of Heaven's mouth. He didn't know anything and actually came up to cause trouble. Clearly, he was blown up by Yi Tianyun. When he knew that Yi Tianyun had returned, he immediately rushed over to question him. Who knew that this question would result in his own face being slapped swollen? If Yi Tianyun had a treasure that could suppress the heavenly venerate path, he would have long soared to the sky. That was set up by the vast heavenly venerate. It required at least a high-grade heavenly Tao treasure, or even a higher-grade treasure, to be able to suppress it. How could Yi Tianyun have a treasure of this grade? Even if he had such a treasure, if his cultivation was too low, he wouldn't be able to display its effects. At the very least, so many elders didn't have such a treasure. They all knew how powerful the heavenly venerate path was. It was completely a test of one's Tao heart. To suppress this kind of illusion, even more precious treasures were needed. Among so many treasures, the most precious type was the type that suppressed illusions. After all, towards the later stages of cultivation, there would be the tribulation of mental demons. It was extremely difficult to have a treasure that could suppress mental demons or illusions. If it was similarly a high-grade reincarnation-grade treasure, a treasure that could suppress mental demons would definitely be comparable to 2 or 3 treasures of the same grade. This was how precious it was. Therefore, such words coming from the mouth of the Lord of Heaven was already scolded as extremely brainless. Saying such words without knowing the situation was asking to be humiliated. This heavenly venerate path was set up by the heavenly venerate. Only then did the Lord of Heaven realize what nonsense he had said. If it wasn't a treasure given by an elder, Lee Tianyun couldn't possibly have this treasure. This meant that from start to finish, it was him who thought that Lee Tianyun was cheating. Zongyun, Lord of Heaven, you barged into the elder's meeting without permission and asked a question that was extremely laughable. Elder Go Huang's expression became solemn. Now, I sentence you to be imprisoned in the Reflection Tower for 2,000 years. During this period, you can't take half a step out. If you sneak out, you'll be imprisoned for an additional 2,000 years. Elder Rui Feng, do you agree to my punishment? Elder Rui Feng was the master of Zongyun's Lord of Heaven, so she naturally had the right to ask about this matter. I agree with Elder Go Huang's punishment, Elder Rui Feng said expressionlessly. In his heart, he had cursed the Lord of Heaven countless times. He really wanted to protect Zongyun. However, this Lord of Heaven Zongyun was too stupid. If he wanted to cause trouble outside, he would definitely be fine. However, there was a rule that one absolutely could not barge into an elder's meeting unless it was an extremely important matter. Who would have thought that things would turn out to be so childish? This made everyone suspect whether this Lord of Heaven Zongyun's head had been kicked by a donkey. He was acting crazy in front of so many elders. Even if he wanted to die, he shouldn't act like this, right? Elder Rui Feng. When the Lord of Heaven Zongyun opened his mouth, wanting to shout something, the guards had already surrounded him, wanting to drag him into the Reflection Tower. Go and reflect properly. Don't be so impulsive in the future. Elder Rui Feng sighed. His disciple's talent was not bad, but his head was not too good. No, don't, the Lord of Heaven Zongyun screamed. To be dragged into the Reflection Tower for 2,000 years, he would definitely go crazy. 2,000 years was not a long time, but to be trapped in one place for the entire time, to make a genius like him run around everywhere and enjoy those respectful gazes, he would definitely not be happy. Elder Rui Feng did not even look at him. This kind of matter could only be like this. What else could he do? Elders, my apologies. The Lord of Heaven Zongyun recently encountered a bottleneck in his cultivation, that's why he made such a joke. I hope that elders do not take offense. Elder Rui Feng stood up and apologized. As the master, he definitely had to clean up his disciple's mess. It's fine. Elder Go Huang waved his hand and continued, Lord of Heaven Cloud Earth, since you have chosen to participate in the palace's grand competition, I look forward to your performance. You have obtained the Heavenly Sovereign's inheritance, so I hope that you will cultivate well in the future. If you have any questions, you can look for me. Elder Go Huang's last sentence could be said to carry a lot of weight. His position here was extremely high, and these words were equivalent to making him Lee Tianyun's backer. When the time came, who would dare to provoke him? Many thanks, Elder Go Huang. Lee Tianyun stood up and expressed his thanks. After saying this, they each left. They originally wanted to discuss Lee Tianyun's situation and what kind of treatment they wanted to give him. Now it seemed that they would observe him for the time being. Before Elder Xiao Tian left, he glanced at Lee Tianyun, the corners of his mouth curling into a cold smile. I really didn't expect you to complete the way of the Heavenly Sovereign. That's really incredible. Elder Dong Yun praised Lee Tianyun the entire way. This special honor could be said to have made him proud. I didn't know that I could complete it. It was really luck, Lee Tianyun said modestly. If this is luck, then everyone else is completely unlucky. Elder Dong Yun smiled, then his expression immediately turned serious. However, there is one thing that you are indeed too impulsive about. I know that you are quite capable, but this is the palace's grand competition. This is a little too impulsive. It seems that the palace attaches great importance to this grand competition. Lee Tianyun looked at Elder Dong Yun's expression and knew that this matter was definitely not simple. It's not just attaching great importance. This is related to the changes in the palace's camp. The various elders and even the region lord will come to watch. Especially the region lord, who is often elusive. However, he will definitely appear in the palace's grand competition. If your performance is too bad, the region lord will definitely not appreciate it. At that time, you will be building a wall for yourself. Elder Dong Yun shook his head and said hatefully, Elder Xiao Tian deliberately wants you to die from excessive praise. He wants you to make a fool of yourself in front of the region lord. That's why he did this. So that's how it is. Even the region lord came to watch. Yi Tianyun squinted his eyes. In today's meeting, there was no region lord. That's right. The palace's grand competition always sends out the 3 most outstanding people to compete against each other. Now you are one of them. The other 2 are Huolian and Yulong. The other party sends out their most outstanding people, so the competition is extremely difficult. Every one of them has a very strong demonic flame, and their ability to control it is top-notch. Elder Dong Yun said in a low voice, especially their forging technique, which has reached the level of uncanny workmanship. They can create extremely high-quality weapons. Weapons are always the most important, so even the region lord pays close attention to the palace's grand competition. Yi Tianyun nodded. No wonder the region lord personally came to watch. If the outstanding geniuses were trained well, the Heavenly Spring Holy Realms weapons would be secured in the future. Elder Dong Yun, does the Heavenly Spring Holy Realm have a water element core? Yi Tianyun asked the important question. Water element core? Of course there is. They even specially divided it into the region lord's shrine, Elder Dong Yun said. Then, do I have a chance to enter and cultivate? Yi Tianyun's eyes brightened. There was a chance. That's a little difficult. Unless you get the region lord's approval, it will be difficult to enter. Even if you complete the heavenly sovereign path, it won't work. Elder Dong Yun shook his head and said, the region lord's personality is hard to understand. No one knows what he is thinking. What if I get a good result in the palace's grand competition? Yi Tianyun asked. If you get a good result and get the region lord's recognition, then it won't be a problem. All right, then get a good result. Yi Tianyun smiled. This time, he had to give it his all. Chapter 1140. You want to go to the core to cultivate? Elder Dong Yun looked him up and down and asked in puzzlement, don't you have a demonic fire? Why do you want to go there to cultivate? Generally speaking, those who had a demonic fire in their bodies were more or less fire-attributed. Even if they didn't have a fire-attributed physique, it was impossible to connect them to water-attributed energy. After all, the two were conflicting and couldn't be connected. That's right. I plan to go there to cultivate. Although it's water-attributed, it's still very helpful to me. Yi Tianyun explained. He didn't say that he was going to the water core to cultivate in order to break through to the 10th refinement Earth Lord. If word got out, even Elder Dong Yun would think that he was an idiot. How could there be a 10th refinement Earth Lord? The 10th refinement Earth Lord was a level that didn't exist. After so many years, it had been deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even many celestial venerables believed that it was impossible for there to be a 10th refinement Earth Lord. Therefore, he couldn't be bothered to say more. As long as it wasn't the truth, no one would believe that there was a 10th refinement Earth Lord. If you really need it, then you must obtain excellent results in the Divine Creation Palace tournament. Otherwise, the governor won't let you go to the water core to cultivate. Elder Dong Yun said, no problem. I will definitely work hard to obtain excellent results in the tournament. Yi Tianyun nodded. He originally thought that he would be able to smoothly enter through the celestial venerable path. From Elder Dong Yun's words, he understood that the governor's situation wasn't simple. Just based on this, the governor wouldn't allow it. All right, I'll take you to understand the forging techniques of our Divine Creation Palace now. Elder Dong Yun said in a deep voice. The situation is urgent now. You still need to cultivate a lot. You don't have much time. You only have less than 2 months. During this time, you have to add time to your cultivation. Then, under Elder Dong Yun's lead, they returned to the Divine Creation Palace. He didn't directly bring Yi Tianyun to the Scripture Pavilion. Instead, he brought him directly into the Divine Creation Palace. They had just arrived at the Divine Creation Palace. The flames here were much higher than those outside. If an ordinary person were to enter, they would have already died from the heat. Even an ordinary Star Lord wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Dang dang. Just as Yi Tianyun entered, he saw a burly man holding a giant hammer. He began to smash down again and again, refining the melted material into a perfect weapon. On the other hand, there were other smithing skills. One would directly smash with one's hands and use the simplest and most violent method to quench the impurities, leaving behind the essence in the end. Then, he would use his astral power to purify the impurities in the void quenching. There were many ways to do this, and all of them had different effects. Everyone, stop for a moment. Elder Dongyun clapped his hands to signal for everyone to stop. Soon, the Fire Lotus, the Lord of Heaven, and the others surrounded him. When they saw Yi Tianyun, they were pleasantly surprised. Little junior brother is back. How does it feel to steal the heavens and steal the earth? That's right. I was so focused on forging that I didn't even know that junior brother had returned. Quick, tell me, what's the situation with stealing the heavens and God's earth? Yeah, none of us have been to pilfering the heavens before, so we don't know what it's like. They surrounded him one by one, extremely curious about pilfering heaven divine land. Since they were preparing to participate in the Divine Creation Palace tournament, they basically cultivated here. There were furnaces all around, so it was undoubtedly a good place to forge weapons. Alright, let's talk about these things later. Now, we need to talk about something more serious. Immediately, Elder Dong Yun told the general situation. After listening to it, everyone was shocked. They all looked at Yi Tianyun and felt that it was a little unbelievable. Originally, there were three main forces: Fire Lotus, Imperial Dragon, and Still Water. Now, still water can't be the main force for the time being. Elder Dongyun shook his head. In order to participate in the Divine Creation Palace tournament, the Lord of Heaven worked extremely hard to gain face. Now that Yi Tianyun had taken his spot, how could he not comfort him? The Divine Creation Palace only sent 3 people to participate in the tournament. The rest could only watch from the side or cheer on. Therefore, they could only send 3 people each time. They could only participate 3 times at most before they could no longer participate. They could only send 3 people, mainly for the sake of excellence. Even the domain master personally came to watch. If the disciple's standard was average, the domain master would be unhappy. The Lord of Heaven's pupils constricted. He never expected to hear such a result. He immediately looked at Yi Tianyun and said solemnly, "Junior brother, tell me how you feel right now." "I'll do my best and definitely won't drag the senior brothers down," Yi Tianyun said solemnly. "Good. Your words are enough. I'll participate next time. I'll give this opportunity to you." The Lord of Heaven said solemnly, "If I find out that you don't treat it well, don't blame me for being impolite." This was an extremely serious tournament. Either do your best or don't participate. There was no third choice. If he found out that Yi Tianyun was not paying enough attention, he would undoubtedly be furious. "Senior brother Shursui, if such a situation really happens, I'll leave the Divine Fabrication Palace on my own accord." Yi Tianyun said firmly, "This is what I'm about to do, so I'll definitely do my best and be responsible for my actions." Good. The others were very satisfied with Yi Tianyun's words. Yi Tianyun's previous performance was not bad, and he could see the standards of the others. However, he knew nothing about smithing, so he was naturally worried. However, seeing Yi Tianyun so confident, they were not disappointed. Even if they really lost, they would at least take it seriously. For the rest of the time, you will be cultivating here. If there's anything you don't understand, ask them for advice. Elder Dongyun said, "Of course, you can ask me as well. The smithing books are on the side, you can take a look." There were many books on the side, all of them related to smithing. Compared to blindly reading books, it was undoubtedly simpler and more direct to observe the smithing skills of the other senior brothers. Elder Dongyun knew the problem, so he directly let Yi Tianyun observe the other senior brothers' smithing. Under normal circumstances, observing others' smithing was extremely rude. As they were all senior brothers, it was normal for them to observe. The key was that there was not enough time, so Elder Dongyun hoped that he could improve faster. His control of fire was not bad, and his demonic fire was not bad. With these as a prerequisite, it would not be difficult to improve. No problem, I'll be troubling senior brothers. Lee Dong-yun cupped his hands and said, It's no trouble, after all, junior brother, you helped us win a lot of astral stones. That's right, what's there to be troubled about? You must obtain good results in the tournament. Even if you can't get to the front, at least make Elder Shao Tian feel disgusted. Chapter 1141. In the following time, Lee Tianyun took the forging technique book and read it one by one, basically 10 lines at a glance. With the help of the appraisal eye, he scanned the contents into his head and firmly remembered them. These contents are of great help to him. Although he is a grade 1 divine craftsman, which belongs to a relatively high stage, his comprehensive ability is not very high. When he read the forging technique books here, he realized that what he learned is the foundation. The system provides only the foundation, there are still many things that need to be filled. This is just like the upgrade gift pack provided before, it is just a basic ability, it is not something that is extremely heaven-defying. Now, he was eagerly absorbing the experience here, constantly strengthening himself. Coupled with the guidance of other senior brothers, it makes his cultivation faster. He knows that if he wants to win this battle, there is still a lot to learn, so he must increase his efforts in cultivation. I almost forgot, I still have the upgrade gift pack here. He suddenly remembered that he still has the upgrade gift pack that he has not opened. The upgrade gift pack was given when he came to the Divine Realm. It is just that it needs to be opened by Earth Lord Julian. After breaking through, he was too busy and forgot to open it. He immediately found a place to meditate and pretended to be meditating. Open Earth Lord Julian Upgrade Gift Pack. Ding! Open Earth Lord Julian Upgrade Gift Pack. Obtained 300 times EXP card, 100 times Crazy Point card, 100 times Proficiency card, 100 times Sin Value card. Heavenly Master Upgrade Gift Pack. Can only be opened when reaching Heavenly Master Realm. Deducting 1 billion Crazy Point, 50 million Sin Value, starting to upgrade data. In an instant, a large part of his data was deducted. The data that he worked so hard to earn was directly taken away. Although he can't use it for the time being, it is still very painful to have a large part of it taken away. Ding! Start to upgrade physical data. When the upgrade data prompt appeared, he suddenly felt that the energy in his body began to change, especially the power in his body. It seems to be beginning to evolve rapidly. Especially his body, he felt that his body has become full of extreme compatibility. He felt that he can absorb any kind of energy. Before, he could absorb other energy, but it was definitely not as smooth as now. It is like becoming an omnipotent body. Ding! You have successfully leveled up your physique to become the heavenly god body. You can now absorb all kinds of energy for your own use, regardless of the type of energy. At the same time, it can be transformed into any kind of physique, allowing the body to be more compatible with all kinds of martial arts and energy. Ding! Starting to upgrade experience data. Ding! Successfully leveled up data. Experience points have been compressed. 1 experience point is equivalent to 100 billion points. At the same time, the experience points can be given to anyone to be converted into energy to help them level up. Great art of imparting, please use it according to the other party's situation to prevent them from exploding. Crazy Point and Sin Point are also compressed. They can't be converted to others, but they can be converted to each other. Ding! Starting to upgrade shop data. Successfully upgraded the merchant shop's data. Added the merchant shop's copy function. As long as you sell something once, the same thing will appear in the merchant shop and you can buy it. Starting to upgrade favorability. Ding! Successfully upgraded favorability data. Accurately separated the data of men and women. Whether it is favorability or loyalty, detailed data can be seen. Ding! Upgrade complete. Lee Tianyun was stunned by this pile of data. He thought that he would just get some data gift packs. But now he found out that it's not just experience cards. He even upgraded his stats once again. Just like when he first came here, everything had changed. Many things have become practical. For example, his body has become heavenly divine body. It can accommodate all kinds of energy and can be converted to each other. It's simply a heaven-defying physique. This meant that when he absorbed other energies, there wouldn't be any conflicts inside. Then there is the experience data. It's simply heaven-defying. He can train his underlings well. He can send the experience points to them. If he uses it, wouldn't his level soar crazily? He got a lot of experience now, but those with low cultivation level don't need so much experience. If he uses it, he can immediately level up dozens of times. Especially his pets, it's easier to level up. When he goes back, he can also let Shueyun and the others improve their cultivation level and make himself stronger. In terms of training his underlings, it's simply divine help. Furthermore, they could exchange energy with each other, which made him feel very shocked. It means that proficiency can be converted to crazy point or converted to sin point. Everything is connected. In this way, where there is a shortage, he can transfer the excess, which is a very humane effect. Finally, the favorability effect, this can be upgraded. He thinks it's very suitable. When he turned his head to look at senior sister Fire Lotus, the detailed data came out. Favorability 50 points, favorability 100 points, loyalty 50 points, 100 points is full, 50 points is passing. Then he looked at senior brother Imperial Dragon. Favorability 100 points, loyalty 50 points. This time there is no love. If a man likes me, then it's really strange. However, this loyalty of 50 points means that he is still trustworthy. If he wants to reach 100 points of loyalty, then he needs to deepen the situation. However, this loyalty means that he will still betray him, but it's better than those who are 10 or 20, they will stab him in the back. In the past, this data was barely sufficient for the favorability rating. But now, it was completely different. Providing data at this time means that he can see a lot of things in the future. Although the previous favorability is high, it doesn't mean that there will be no betrayal. Loyalty was the only thing that mattered. Under extremely high conditions, it would not change. Under the label of loyalty, as long as the loyalty reaches 100 points, it will not drop directly. Unless Tianyun does something that disgusts them, such as robbing their wife and so on, otherwise it will not drop. This is a kind of auxiliary thing, not very important, but it's better than nothing. The most useful is the first 3 points, such as the shop mode. It made his eyes light up. Selling what you need once, then you can buy it again. This sounded magical. A long time ago, he looked for accumulating soul grass everywhere. Now he no longer has to worry about it. As long as he finds one and sells it in the shop, he can keep buying it. The price is a bit expensive, but at least he doesn't need to look around. Chapter 1142. Tianyun was pleasantly surprised. This was an unexpected surprise. He had been busy with the matter previously and only opened the gift pack now. He didn't expect to receive so many surprises. However, after the surprise, he still had to cultivate properly. With the heaven's divine body, he could strengthen his elemental abilities. He could directly transform himself into a fire-type physique, which was comparable to the holy fire physique. It was a top-notch physique. Cultivating it would definitely yield twice the results with half the effort. Little junior brother, is there anything you don't understand? Is that so? Remember to ask if you have any questions. Don't just stand there like a fool. That's right. Remember to ask. Don't force yourself. When they saw that Tianyun only watched without asking, they felt that it was strange. After all, this was a huge matter, and they couldn't afford to be careless. No, senior brothers, cultivate well. I will just watch from the side. Tianyun didn't force himself. With the help of the appraisal eye, he could already absorb a lot of experience. It could even be said that he could draw according to the gourd and forge something of the same standard as them perfectly. Many of the senior brothers present were first and second grade divine craftsmen, with the highest being third grade divine craftsmen. For example, Fire Lotus and the others were third grade divine craftsmen. They weren't at this level in the past, but they had a breakthrough recently and were third grade divine craftsmen. This was considered a very shocking talent. If they continued to break through like this, they would soon be close to the elder level. Elder East Cloud was a 5th-grade divine craftsman and could forge low-grade Heaven's Tao weapons. This could be said to be relatively easy to forge. His true limit was forging mid-grade Heaven's Tao weapons, which was shockingly accurate. However, the failure rate of forging mid-grade Heaven's Tao weapons was slightly higher. Unless one reached the level of a 6th-grade divine craftsman, the success rate would greatly increase. Is that so? They looked at each other. Tianyun had been watching from the side and hadn't practiced it before, so they didn't really believe it. Little junior brother, let's be frank. We just don't trust your standard. You say it's fine now, but we don't know what your true standard is. Why don't you forge a weapon now? Let me see how strong it is. Only then can we feel more at ease. This concerns our honor, so we can't afford to be careless. As the representative, High-Dragon's senior apprentice brother had to be more straightforward with his words. They didn't know if Tianyun really understood or if he was just pretending. Hence, they had to clarify things. All right, I'll try refining the medial grade reincarnation grade weapon that senior brother Shui just forged. Tianyun knew that he had to display some of his ability. Otherwise, they wouldn't feel at ease. Not to mention them, even he had to know about the situation. No problem. In that case, let's try the mid-grade reincarnation class weapon. Senior brother High-Dragon nodded. Although a middle-grade reincarnation weapon was not Shui's limit, it could be considered a level that could display his strength. From this, it could be seen how good the technique was. If one wanted to refine a high-grade reincarnation grade, one would need to be of a higher standard. Both Grade 2 and Grade 3 divine craftsmen could refine it. However, the difference in success rate was too great. Under everyone's eyes, Tianyun took the materials that Shui Lord of Heaven had previously forged and threw them into the alchemy cauldron. His powerful control of fire made him an expert at playing with fire. They had witnessed such standards before. Tianyun's control of fire was very high, which was the most important aspect of forging. With perfect control of fire, the materials were quickly tempered. It wasn't difficult, but the problem was the technique. Tianyun had been observing for a month, and there wasn't much time left to prepare for the tournament of God's Palace. Hence, they were interested in the technique and wanted to see if he had truly cultivated it to perfection. Rise. Tianyun's eyes narrowed as he rapidly extracted the essence from within. Following that, he spun in the air and landed on the metal plate in front of him. Following that, he brandished his fist and smashed it violently. The ability that Shui Lord of Heaven had displayed was to use his fist to forge a weapon. It was extremely violent. Generally speaking, such a violent forging method was suitable for forging giant swords. Every punch was able to create a shape out of the mass of liquid and spread it out bit by bit, forming the shape of a giant sword. Such proficient techniques were simply better than Shui Lord of Heaven. Although Tianyun was only a first-grade divine craftsman, the standard that he had displayed wasn't inferior to Shui Lord of Heaven, who was a second-grade divine craftsman. Everyone's eyes lit up. They didn't expect Tianyun's standard to be so good and reach such an astonishing level. His forging ability was already better than Shui Lord of Heaven. Although what Shui Lord of Heaven had displayed previously wasn't his peak ability, it was already very close. Now that Tianyun had displayed his ability that was close to his standard, it definitely wouldn't be a problem for Tianyun to participate in the tournament of God's Palace. Clang! With the final punch, a giant sword was struck out just like that. Although it was just a simple and violent punch, the forged sword wasn't rough at all. In fact, it was very exquisite. The surface of the giant sword was extremely smooth, and it was impossible for there to be a fist mark on it. If there was a fist mark, it wouldn't be able to be used. This forging method was to use the strength on the surface of the fist to spread out the material and shake the material until it was smooth. It's done. Tianyun slapped down, and the giant sword bounced up. After spinning a few rounds in the air, it landed in his hand. With a light flick, a crisp sound could be heard. Immediately after, he handed the giant sword to Shui Lord of Heaven. This time, he had taken up a slot, so it was naturally up to Shui Lord of Heaven to evaluate. Not bad, not bad. This standard is even better than mine. If your level goes up a little more, you'll far surpass me. Shursui, Lord of Heaven, heaved a sigh of relief and said, "This way, there won't be any problem for you to participate in the tournament of God's palace." That's right. This standard, I was worried for nothing. I thought little junior brother was too embarrassed to ask, but it turns out that you can really learn it just by watching. I've seen people learn it just by watching and they don't need to train at all. Little junior brother is definitely one of them. I remember now. Isn't little junior brother's judgment of people very strong? If that's the case, it wouldn't be surprising if he could tell something from watching us train. Only then did they remember that Tianyun could tell accurate information from watching people. If it was here, he would have the same effect. But if that was the case, it would really be nature-defying. Being able to tell something from watching people, and being able to tell the effect from watching others train, they didn't know how his eyes worked. Chapter 1143. In the remaining time, Tianyun also joined in the practice and continuously forged weapons. He was actually just trying it out and displaying what he had learned to see how effective it was. With the help of the appraisal eye and the actions of many people, he had already learned most of the forging techniques. He didn't dare to say all of them, but he had at least learned most of them. Soon, it was time for the tournament of God's palace. Under the lead of Elder Dong Yun, their group headed to the competition hall of the tournament of God's palace. When they arrived, there was already a huge crowd. Most of the spectators nearby were not from the palace of God's palace. They were all spectators from other celestial palaces. The palace of gods was a treasure ground that could forge weapons. They wanted to see which genius would appear and make friends with them. When they had the materials in the future, they could ask someone to help them forge weapons. The price would definitely be much cheaper than outside. Hence, the palace of God's palace was extremely popular among the other celestial palaces. Those who came to spectate were disciples from the sword palace or the spear palace. They all hoped that they could have a powerful weapon. When they arrived, those who couldn't participate could only sit in the spectator seats. Those who could be substituted by Elder Dong Yun were only Tianyun, Fire Lotus Lord of Heaven, and Imperial Dragon Lord of Heaven. Only the participants could enter the venue. The rest couldn't. There are so many people. Tianyun looked around and saw that there were already many groups in front. There were at least 7 groups. Including them, there were a total of 8 groups. Each group was led by an elder. This meant that there were 8 elders. This wasn't surprising as they were all god monarchs. The god territory was so vast and there were too many disciples. There was definitely a need for more elders to guide them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to keep up. 8 groups, with 3 people in each group. In total, there were 24 people. They basically represented the strongest newcomers. Every tournament of God's palace would send newcomers. This time was no exception. Tianyun looked around and saw that most of them were unfamiliar faces. He had never seen them before, so naturally, they were all unfamiliar faces. Most importantly, all of them were at the level of the Lord of Heaven. Tianyun was the only earthly monarch. If it wasn't for Elder Shao Tian's overbearing attitude, Tianyun definitely wouldn't have participated. He wasn't interested in this in the first place, and he had already decided who would participate. If they wanted to participate, they had to be at least at the level of the Lord of Heaven. It wasn't that they were discriminating against earth monarchs, but that the Lord of Heaven's cultivation was more mature. Most importantly, the longer they stayed in the God Creation Palace, the more they could unleash their full potential. Thus, his appearance immediately became the focus of everyone's attention. Among so many Lord of Heaven, there was only one Earth Monarch. This was truly shocking. There's actually an Earth Monarch among the participants this time. His cultivation level is a bit vague, so I can't really tell what level he's at. That's right. It's actually an Earth Monarch participating in the competition. This is incredible. Could it be that they have some shocking power? It looks like he's from the human race. That's strange. There's actually a human participating, and he's even an Earth Monarch. This is truly puzzling. Everyone began to discuss. The original topic was about the God Creation Palace and who would be the one to emerge. Now, the topic of discussion had shifted to Yi Tianyun. Yi Tianyun's identity was special, and his cultivation was special. How could he not attract attention? This kid is finally here. I want to see what he can learn in the past few months. Elder Xiao Tian said with a smile as soon as he saw Yi Tianyun on the stage. He felt that Yi Tianyun was truly an idiot, and Elder Dong Yun was even more of an idiot. He really let Yi Tianyun participate. If Elder Dong Yun didn't let Yi Tianyun participate, he didn't feel that there was any problem. He would rather embarrass Yi Tianyun than embarrass himself. This was a matter of the entire camp, but Elder Dong Yun still sent Yi Tianyun. How could he not be an idiot? Master, this is the human that embarrassed you? A handsome youth at the side looked at Yi Tianyun with an extremely cold gaze. That's right. Not only did he defeat your junior brother, but he also embarrassed me. Elder Xiao Tian gritted his teeth and said, in this competition, all of you have to perform well and make them lose even more miserably. Master, haven't they lost badly enough in the past? Shu Bo Lord of Heaven's eyes were filled with mockery. Come to think of it, their results have always been rather average. I don't know where they got their luck this time, but they encountered two rather outstanding disciples. However, compared to all of you, they are still lacking. Elder Xiao Tian sneered and said, no matter what, all of you have to suppress them ruthlessly in the competition. That's for sure. Not only do you have to suppress them, but you have to suppress the entire competition. They laughed. Their laughter was filled with confidence, as if they had some sort of secret weapon. While the crowd was discussing them, Yi Tianyun's expression was calm and he did not feel nervous at all. There was nothing to be nervous about. He did not care about how the others looked at him. After all, it was not a problem for him. He had long gotten used to it. Junior brother, don't be so nervous. Don't care about what they think. Just prove yourself later, Senior Sister Fiery Lotus comforted him. Senior Sister Fiery Lotus, it's fine. I won't be nervous. Yi Tianyun smiled. That's good. Just focus on the competition and ignore what the others say. Senior Sister Fiery Lotus nodded. That's right. Don't be nervous. Just perform your best. Senior brother Yulong also encouraged him. Yi Tianyun nodded and followed them to their respective camps. There was a fixed stove. The stove was basically fixed. There would not be any special stove, and they could not use their own stove. The only thing that could change was their own ability, which was their demon fire. The rest was basically fixed. For example, the materials would not change. After Elder Dongyun brought them to their respective seats, they sat at the side. They were not the hosts of the competition. Soon, Elder Go Huang and the others flew over and took their seats at the front. The most eye-catching seat in the center was still empty. Without a doubt, this was the seat of the territorial master. However, the territorial master had not appeared yet. No one knew when she would arrive. No one dared to complain about the territorial master. If it was known, it would be extremely disrespectful. Just as everyone was discussing when the territorial master would arrive, a crack suddenly appeared in the void. A beautiful figure steadily descended from the sky and finally appeared in front of everyone. Yi Tianyun looked up and saw a faint blue lotus flower slowly descending from the sky. Her long skirt fluttered gently, blocking everyone's view. When she landed and sat on the chair in the center, Yi Tianyun finally saw the person's appearance. It was a beautiful woman. She wore a light blue long skirt. Even her eyes were light blue. She looked like she was made of water. How stunning! Chapter 1144. This woman was the territorial lord. The territorial lord was actually a woman. Although it wasn't like there had never been a female domain lord before, it was still an extremely rare existence. In this world where men were superior to women, she must be very capable to be able to become the territorial lord. Otherwise, even if she was more talented than many people, she wouldn't have been able to sit in this position if her prestige wasn't strong enough. So this is the territorial lord. Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. He didn't expect it to be a woman. No wonder Elder Dong Yun said that the territorial lord was unmoved by force or persuasion. She was a strong woman, and it was obvious that she relied on her ability to make a living. If he wanted her to nod and agree, he must show his true ability, otherwise, she wouldn't even bother with him. Azure Region Lord, Peak Divine Lord Cultivation Level, one step away from breaking through to the Heavenly Master level. Possesses the extremely rare Heavenly Water Holy Body, has a strong affinity with the water attribute, and has a special talent. Wears high-grade Heavenly Tao equipment and can burst out extremely strong power. Overall combat power is 30 million star power, normal state. 30 million star power. This combat power is really brutal. No wonder she became the territorial lord. When Tian Yun saw this combat power, he couldn't help but gasp. Compared to the other elders, she was several streets ahead. However, he had seen many such strong women. For example, Bai Shui Huang and Yi Qingxian in the mortal realm were one of them, so it wasn't surprising. Only when one was strong to a certain level could they manage so many strong people, otherwise, they wouldn't have a chance to rise. Azure Region Lord. Many elders got up and greeted her respectfully, including the disciples around them. They all stood up and didn't dare to sit down. This was their territorial lord, how could they not stand up? Some of the people who had never seen the region lord before were now able to see her face. Especially when they saw that the region lord was a woman, their imaginations ran wild. If someone could marry the domain lord, then that person would really have a meteoric rise. Well, sit down. Azure Region Lord nodded gently and gestured for everyone to sit down. Everyone sat down. After she sat down, she glanced at the many participants and finally stopped at Itonyum. Humans? Region Mistress Glaze was a little curious. She had seen so many competitions, but this was the first time she saw a human from the human race participating. It's even Earth Monarch Jiulian. This level is not bad. Interesting. Elder Go Huang stood up and explained, Lord Glazed Region Master, this is a new disciple who recently completed the Heavenly Sovereign's path and obtained the vast Heavenly Sovereign's legacy. Complete the Heavenly Sovereign path? In the light blue eyes of Region Master Glaze, there was a bit of surprise. The way of the Celestial Master? Some of us have finished walking here? This was a pleasant surprise. Who would have thought that a human would be the one to complete it? How surprising. No wonder they sent him up at the earthly monarch realm. If he didn't have some ability, he wouldn't have sent him up. Elder Go Huang was embarrassed and didn't know how to answer her. Elder Go Huang couldn't possibly say that he was forced by Elder Xiao Tian, could he? Yes, we are looking forward to his performance. Elder Go Huang smiled awkwardly. Region Master Glaze nodded her head lightly and didn't say anything else. She continued to look around to see if there were any newcomers. After looking around, she nodded her head lightly and said, the tournament of God's Palace that is held once every 100 years is to select outstanding newcomers and focus on nurturing them. In the blink of an eye, 100 years has passed. Now, it's time for you newcomers to show your skills. I hope you won't disappoint me. We will definitely not disappoint Region Master Glaze. One by one, they shouted excitedly. How could they not be excited to be able to perform in front of the Region Master? If the Region Master Glaze took a liking to them, they would really explode. This kind of thing wasn't unheard of. Previously, the Region Master Glaze took a fancy to a decent disciple and brought him to train. Soon after, he became an elder. The Region Master Glaze nodded her head and smiled faintly. Before the assessment, I will roughly explain the rewards this time. The top 3 will receive a personal guidance from me once. At the same time, I will fulfill a small request of yours. For example, if you want a martial art, a treasure, or to go to the Heaven's sacred ground for training, there won't be any problems. Everyone's eyes lit up. The Region Master Glaze's reward was really generous. Apart from guidance, there was also a small request. The request could be imagined by themselves. The example was already very tempting. This kind of reward that wasn't explicitly mentioned was even more tempting. The group of participants were all excited. At least 3 of them would be able to get it. If there was only one, it would be very difficult to fight for it. Then let's prepare for the assessment. The Region Master Glaze's expression didn't change at all. She looked very calm. The content of the assessment will be different every time. Generally speaking, there will only be 3 stages. Each time, the results will be determined by the score. The lowest score will be 0, and the highest will be 10. As for the evaluators, this time, I will let the elders of the Palace of God's Palace evaluate. I will not participate in any score evaluation. When this suggestion was made, everyone was shocked. There was such a scoring method. One had to know that the elders of the Palace of God's Palace viewed each other as enemies. There were many who formed alliances with each other, but there were more who viewed each other as enemies. For example, Elder Xiao Tian and Elder Dong Yun viewed each other as enemies. If Elder Xiao Tian were to evaluate Yi Tian Yun and the rest, he might give them an unfair score of 1 or even 0. Of course, I hope that everyone will treat this fairly. If you want to give such a score, you have to give a corresponding reason. If you judge randomly, I think you will know the result. While everyone was discussing, the Region Master Glaze added another sentence. This caused some of the elders who were planning to give their opponents low scores to wipe off their cold sweat. The Region Master Glaze didn't finish her sentence, but it made their hearts beat faster. It's all right. If it was Elder Xiao Tian, he would definitely give us a low score. Yulong Lord of Heaven heaved a sigh of relief. If they gave random scores, they would definitely be finished. But this Region Master Glaze is really beautiful. Huolian Lord of Heaven wasn't concerned about the competition, but about the Region Master Glaze. She is indeed beautiful, but the most important thing is that she can control an area. As a female, she can stand above so many powerhouses. This is her most eye-catching aspect, Yi Tianyun commented from the side. Huolian Lord of Heaven's eyes lit up. She grabbed Yi Tianyun's arm and said excitedly, "Little junior brother, you've touched my heart." She is the role model for us female cultivators. All along, we female cultivators have had a low status. Region Master Glaze is our role model. Don't worry. Senior Sister Huolian, you will also have a place in the future. Yi Tianyun smiled. Chapter 1145. The Region Mistress Colored Glaze did not elaborate on the rules. She simply handed the assessment over to the elders of the Palace of Gods for them to assess. Other than not being able to assess their own disciples, they were allowed to assess everything else. The final average of the scores would be their scores. It could be said that every camp had 7 judges, and the scores would be determined by them. The rules are as such. I will not participate in any assessment. After all, I don't know how to forge any weapons, so it's not up to me to assess. Although I was the one who decided in the past, I've decided to let the elders decide this time. There are some changes this time, so I'll inform the elders in advance. This was the first time the Region Mistress Colored Glaze made a change. In the past, she was the one who determined the scores of the participants. However, her judgment was not bad, and she was able to determine whose weapon was better. However, there was a change this time. Region Mistress Colored Glaze, may I know why you have changed? Elder Go Huang was curious. I just feel that it's better to change some things, especially the assessment content that I've decided on. There will be major changes compared to the previous years. Hence, I need the assistance of the elders, or else it will be difficult to assess. Region Mistress Colored Glaze revealed her true thoughts. The changes were too drastic, and she needed the help of the elders. Many of the participants stared. Could it be that the assessment this time would be more insane? I see. Then we'll be looking forward to the assessment from Region Mistress Colored Glaze. The content of every assessment is always amazing. Elder Go Huang praised from the side. The other elders agreed one after another. It was not bootlicking, but the topic set by Region Mistress Colored Glaze was really good and amazing. The most important thing was that it would be of great help to the assessment, as it could test everyone's standards. When the participants heard this, they felt a little uneasy. Who knew what kind of weird thing the Region Mistress Colored Glaze would do this time? Regent Mistress Colored Glaze smiled and looked at the elders. Then I'll leave it to the elders of the Palace of Gods. We don't deserve it, we don't deserve it. We're more than happy to help. The elders of the Palace of Gods responded one after another. They all knew Regent Mistress Colored Glaze's capabilities, so they were naturally willing to help and had no objections. Regent Mistress Colored Glaze looked at the participants and said loudly, "Before the assessment begins, I'll state a simple rule. Do not interfere with each other. Everything will be based on your own abilities. If you violate this rule, you'll be sentenced to 10,000 years in the Reflection Tower." This was really harsh. Sentenced to 10,000 years in the Reflection Tower. How could they not go crazy? Of course, this was still considered good. At least it wasn't a direct death sentence. That would be truly severe. Everyone nodded. During the competition, they naturally couldn't interfere with each other. Although they were competitors, they absolutely could not interfere with each other. This was the range rule. This was not a martial arts competition. There was no need to interfere with each other. There was no need for that. Mistress Colored Glaze Colored Glaze Colored. Regent Mistress Colored. Wait. Glaze quickly. Mistress Colored to not. Quick of eyes and that they said, Colored Glaze, swift to hands. As be said, he to be, the mistress to say. To Colored, when they received the iron, they realized that they were just ordinary iron, similar to Fan Yu's ordinary dark steel. They could be found everywhere and were not worth much. They were similar to the stones outside. This time, Regent Mistress Colored had thrown the iron. Could it be used as a forging material? Tianyun took the iron and looked around carefully. It was indeed ordinary dark steel. There was not a single bright spot. This is the question? Tianyun squinted his eyes and looked at the dark steel around him. He did not know what the Regent Mistress Colored. He did not know what question the Regent Mistress Colored would give, but judging from the dark steel, it was definitely not an easy question. But thinking about it, if it were too easy, there would be no point in setting a question. Of course, the more difficult the better. Only then would they be able to see their standards. All of you have received the dark steel, right? How long has it been since you last saw it? Regent Mistress Colored looked at them and asked plainly. Everyone looked at each other awkwardly. Some of them had only glanced at it, and some had not even seen it before. How could they have seen such a piece of scrap iron? Most of the people present had grown up with a silver spoon in their mouths. They had never touched a piece of trash material like dark steel. At most, they had seen it. Of course, it did not mean that they did not know how to refine equipment. Since the materials were similar, there would not be a problem if the technique was strong. I believe many of you have not seen it before. Or perhaps you have seen it but have never touched it before. Regent Mistress Colored said plainly, "This time, the question is this dark steel. I know that none of you have used it before, but I will use something that none of you have used as a test topic. Of course, I know that some of you know about it, but this does not affect the fairness. After all, even if you have not used it before, you will be able to make use of it after some experimentation. This is your most basic foundation. If you don't even have this foundation, then don't bother staying in the Palace of Gods." Everyone's eyes turned solemn. These words were indeed true. Even if it was a stone, they would refine it into gold. After all, just because they could not do it didn't mean that others could not. This round's question is very normal. You will simply use this dark steel as the foundation and combine it with other materials to refine a weapon. The higher the grade, the higher the score. Let me first say that it is not simply adding dark steel into the materials, but using dark steel as the main material. If the weapon refined in the end does not have dark steel as the main material, then the score will be invalid. If they were to simply use dark steel to refine a weapon, even if the elders of the Palace of Gods were to refine it, they would not be able to refine a weapon of high quality. Therefore, materials had to be added, but the addition of materials was also very particular. Not all materials could be added to increase the grade crazily. Dark steel itself had a limited capacity. If some materials were to be smashed in, It would directly cause the dark steel to explode. It was unable to contain these overbearing materials, or it would be dominated by other ferocious materials. For example, adding N ore of a higher grade would immediately take over the position of dark steel. Dark steel would be reduced to a supporting role, and it would undoubtedly not receive any points. If it was refined in this way, the question set by Region Mistress Colored Glaze would naturally be meaningless. She wanted to refine as many high-grade materials as possible on this fragile piece of iron. This was a test of their control of fire, their knowledge of materials, and their research on fusion. It was a comprehensive test. With such a difficult question in the first round, everyone felt pressured. Interesting. The question set by Region Mistress Colored Glaze is indeed a little difficult. Lee Dong-yun grabbed onto the dark steel and revealed a smile. This was not difficult for him at all. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.